The Monster of Gotham. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Becoming a Hunter. That must be a handsome bastard. Lizu started running, and his movements were funny compared to Dick's handsome running movements. But Dick, who saw him turn a living person into a toy, would not think so. Turning a living person into a toy, using cuteness to decorate horror. It's like hanging a pink bow on a submachine gun. No matter how gorgeous the decoration is, it still cannot change that its existence is to kill people. Dick envied this power very much. If he had this power, he would definitely turn around and kill those bastard women behind him. When Lizu turned the woman into a toy and gave it to Dick to do whatever he wanted, madness was like gravity, pulling him into it, and Lizu was the one who gently pushed him. They ran into the town, bringing with them the Amazon warriors who were bloodthirsty. The running townspeople encountered this group of warriors, and then another bloody massacre. Dick Grayson was furious. Lizu on the side was panting heavily, as if running had used up all his strength, so he didn't care about anything else. Or maybe he didn't care about anything else at all. Not far away, Dick found that Lizu beside him stopped and leaned against the wall by the road to rest his knees. He was exhausted and looked like a patient with advanced laziness who stayed in the bedroom all year round without seeing the sun. He might also often skip breakfast, but he was also good at acrobatics and was flexible. An acrobat with very poor physical strength? An absolute contradiction. Dick also stopped. We are still far from the train station. If we keep running forward, we will be dead if they catch up with us. There is a place ahead. Maybe we can hide in it. Lizu pointed to the pork processing plant ahead. Dick still had some strength left, but he looked at Lizu, who was so tired that he was panting, and decided to go with him. Boston, a dead man who only Lizu could see, yelled, but no one paid attention. Entering the pork processing plant, the lights here were still on, but there was no one in sight. The skinned dead pigs were split in half and hung on iron hooks. Half, half, and half again. It occupied 80% of the site. The atmosphere here was cold, but it looked much more warm than the hellish scene outside with corpses all over the ground. Dick held the helmet of Naboo and explored the processing plant. After Lizu finished resting, they had to move on. Why didn't you let Dick leave the helmet behind? They just wanted that seemingly worthless thing. The dead man Boston Brand loudly rebuked Lizu. Give it to them, and you will be safe too. Dick Grayson couldn't see him, so Boston could only question Lizu. Lizu lowered his head and searched among the piles of pork. Compromise, just like you suggested, that the shark lick your hand first. In his eyes, it seemed that compromise would never exist. Boston Brand paused when he heard this. Lizu had already gritted his teeth and pulled out a big knife from the pile of pork. A sharp meat saw. One side was a sharp blade. The other side had fine serrations, which should be used to saw bones. The lard made the handle shiny, and in order to increase the friction, the butcher wrapped the handle with linen, which was very easy to hold. Do you think you can beat the Amazons? Boston saw Lizu wielding the meat saw and laughed at him. Those women were not only extremely strong, but some were invulnerable to swords and guns, and could even fly. What could a weirdo in a green suit, who could do a little acrobatics, do with a big boy from an acrobatic troupe? You've already used up all your strength just holding this knife, Boston said. To be honest, I'm only interested in exploring this world, and fighting is outside my interest. Lizu swung the meat saw, and his arm felt a little sore. Boston was right. He had used up all his strength just by picking up the knife. This makes it much easier in his hand. The meat saw quickly shrank and changed into a plastic meat saw toy. You're going to use a toy to chop people? Boston laughed. Toy? Lizu shook his hand violently, and the toy quickly grew larger. From a toy, it turned into a meat saw shining with lard. Dang, the meat saw chopped on half a pork with a dull sound, chopping the pork in half. The sharpness and weight proved that it was a terrible meat saw, not a plastic toy. Ha! I knew this was how to play. Lizu shouted excitedly. Dick had already walked back, wiping the sweat from his forehead. What should we do? If we just stay here, They will catch up with us soon. He just asked Lizu subconsciously. If those bastards in Gotham knew, they would definitely laugh at him without hesitation. If you want to survive in the hunt, then make yourself the hunter, not the prey. In the center of the town, the voice of the red-haired woman in silver-white armor sounded a little annoyed. My patience has run out. How many people have we lost? 3. A shark monster bit Zaya to death. Kaya was shot through the back of the head. Lana is missing. And we only found a toy that looks like Lana, and the toy was smashed. The voice reporting beside him was full of anger. Where is the helmet of Nabu? We must get the queen's bounty. The red-haired woman didn't seem to feel anything about the death of her companion. The 2 men are in this town. Someone has already gone to investigate. I believe the ones who are still alive will give us a satisfactory answer. The Amazon warriors, stepping on the pool of blood, looked at the quiet town in front of them. Just a few minutes ago, it was still very lively here, and many people were screaming and running for their lives. Now they have shut their mouths forever. A warrior came back and reported, they are in a factory. There are footprints there. The footsteps look very flustered. Surround the slaughterhouse. The red-haired woman warned, remember, we only need helmets. The Amazon warriors who received the order moved towards the pork processing plant in a uniform pace, and the gun wall blocked all possible exits. The pork processing plant was surrounded by people. The queen has waited too long. Take the helmet of Nabu. It's time to leave. A small team of 7 people rushed into the pork processing plant. Have we gone the wrong way? They were stunned by the scenes in front of them. There was the smell of raw meat here, but there was no meat. There were toys hanging on the iron hooks, countless toys. Looking at the shape, it looked like a pork cut in half. They dispersed and searched for living people in this toy pork processing factory. There's someone there. The Amazon warrior with pigtails raised the black steel dagger in his hand. The figure in the corner wearing a green suit and holding a toy meat saw paused, as if he didn't expect to be discovered. His face was still a little panicked. The helmet of Nabu is in his hand. I'm coming, Adeline. The warrior with the mohawk heard her voice and trotted over. Finally, this boring pursuit can be ended. Adeline raised the black steel dagger. They only needed a helmet, not a weirdo wearing a helmet and a tasteless green suit. Therefore, the end of this man was also doomed. Puff! Exclamation mark. The long sword pierced her body from behind, and the bloody blade appeared from her chest. The long sword pierced her chest, and her strength was drained, but the strong vitality of the Amazon allowed her to turn around. Christo, you. The one who attacked her was her former companion. Chapter 27 Meeting Queen Diana. Adeline swung her sword and cut off her companion Christo's throat. Christo did not dodge, but her expression was full of fear and pain. Adeline did not have the energy to wonder why, because the man in the green suit was already running towards her, and she no longer had the strength to raise her sword. He kicked the black steel dagger out of her hand and grabbed her shoulder to run away. And while running away, he was still shouting, "Run, we must not be caught. If those Amazon bitches know that our sisters are among them, they will be in danger. This is a conspiracy." Adeline's mind was instantly unblocked. She figured out everything, including Christo's expression when she fell down just now. It was a simple conspiracy. The difficulty was only this man. How to make Christo stab her with that sword. At the same time, there was a curse from behind. It was the other 5 people. They met up and heard that sentence. "Adeline, you're such a bastard." They rushed over quickly. Christo on the ground had already turned into a corpse, but her skin was still warm. When he saw the man holding the helmet of Nabu helping Adeline escape, he understood everything. Kill them and take back the helmet of Nabu. The 5 people formed a reunion formation, but a figure rolled down from the sky. He held a long stick in his hand, and one end of the stick was welded with an iron hook, which was shiny. The stick was swung over at a very tricky angle. Just now, an Amazon warrior was hit in the ribs by the iron hook, and was dragged to the ground. The other 4 immediately gathered their minds, and prepared to sneak attack the boy in a tights wearing a gymnastics suit in front of them. With a puff, the long sword pierced the flesh, and the Amazon warrior standing at the back suddenly turned his sword against his companions. He chopped down a companion. Only 4 people were left standing. The warrior with the long sword and the boy in the gymnastics suit, one in front and one behind, surrounded the only 2 remaining Amazon warriors. The battle situation changed very quickly. No one could have imagined that their companion would suddenly swing a sword at them. Traitor. The two Amazon warriors spat. Their companions who had been with them day and night actually betrayed Paradise Island, betrayed their queen. They would definitely respond to the traitor with swords. Use her blood to extinguish their anger. Get rid of them and never let the news leak out. King Arthur means to annihilate them here and take the helmet of Naboo back. Dick said the lines that Lizu taught him with a blank expression and a stumbling mouth. Use a small trick to disrupt the rhythm of the Amazon warriors, making them suspicious of each other and killing each other. Dick did not refuse. He was excited from the beginning and agreed, as long as he could get revenge. The Amazon warriors who were in the same group with him gritted their teeth, as if they had something to say, but couldn't open their mouths. But all these subtle things were ignored by the two Amazon warriors. They heard more critical information. What? It's Arthur. They knew they had to survive and pass on the news. The queen spent a lot of effort to get the legendary helmet of Naboo. Find the traitor and take back the helmet of Naboo. As the shouts rang out, the battle will not stop. Lizu supported the female warrior with the sword in her chest and came to a deep corner. She bled too much and her face was pale. Even if she was left alone, she would die in a few seconds. Is this your plan? Let us be suspicious of each other? The female warrior sneered. You have the ability to control the human body. Christo has something to say to me. I understand her eyes. She didn't attack me out of her own will. Our general will not be affected by such low-level tricks. But you still killed her. Lizu said, as if it didn't matter if this plan was seen through. He said, your friendship and family affection are as thin as paper. It's just a meaningless joke. You will only unite when you are in a strong position. If there is danger, you will definitely be in chaos. Hey, kill each other. We won't be suspicious of each other. Adeline blushed. She was unwilling to admit the words of the devil in front of her. You are really a demon. When did someone who slaughtered a whole town become a hero, while someone who has never killed anyone become a demon? He shrugged his shoulders to show that he was innocent. Adeline shut her mouth. Her breath was fading, and she knew clearly that she could not argue with this bastard because of her weak voice. Besides, it is not my intention to let you kill each other. I just want to make the boy who just lost his parents feel better. You killed his parents and family, but you can't stop others from taking revenge, right? Lizu opened his hands, and a big box appeared out of thin air and fell to the ground. He opened the box and put the toy meat saw in his hand. From Adeline's angle, she could see that the box was already filled with many plastic toys and plastic figurines. You turned Lana into a toy. Adeline became even more angry and her face became paler. It's time to go. Lizu kicked the box. The box was not closed, and it seemed that he was going to put something in it. Adeline could also guess her fate. You want to escape. Adeline was more concerned about another thing. Amazons not only hate conspirators, but also deserters. Of course not. In fact, I would rather be a captive. This way I can see your queen, right? The great Queen Diana has the lasso of truth. She can easily see through all your lies, and her fists can crush all your conspiracies. Adeline gritted her teeth and said, but she still felt uneasy. The shameless weirdos target is Queen Diana? Even if she believes in the Queen's unparalleled power, she believes that, no matter who it is, it will be a dead end to provoke the Queen. However, the feeling of uneasiness did not decrease. Lizu seemed not to want to continue this boring topic. He picked up the helmet with one hand and put it on his head. This thing, it doesn't seem to be anything special. He turned his head hard, and the slightly larger helmet was thrown back and forth due to inertia. His body did not change at all, and he did not gain divine power. You are not the one chosen by the god Naboo, and you cannot gain that divine power. Adeline's breath became weaker and weaker, and her voice was very small. But she was destined to regret it, and Lizu did not feel sad at all. Instead, he took off his helmet in disgust. He squatted down and put his hand on Adeline's forehead. Sleep for a while, maybe you will wake up soon. Adeline's consciousness fell into darkness. She knew that she was about to become one of this bastard's toy collections, and would be placed in that dark corner forever. She prayed to the gods for the liberation of her soul. But after a moment of darkness, Adeline's consciousness was clear. She was still wondering what happened at this moment, but she heard footsteps. There was also the sound of waves and the shouts of her companions. I'm back to Paradise Island? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28. The rebel Lizu bent down, stretched out his right hand, picked up the toy female warrior with a sword, stuck in her chest, and gently put it into his prop box. There were enough interesting things collected in it, but it was not a real collection, not to mention that Lizu had already understood the real function of these toys. They were not dead, they were just sleeping. Sleeping, they can be awakened. As he gently kicked the box disappeared. In the dark corner, the blood of the female warrior Adeline could still be smelt, as if her screams and curses were still echoing in his ears. Lizu turned his head with a serious face, but the corners of his mouth could not stop curling up. Neurotic laughter. He suspected that he must have been affected by the laughter of Martha Wayne, the female clown, and it was definitely not his own mental problems. Except for sometimes, when he was excited, and his actions were a little unruly, he felt that he was in a good state. Lizu walked out of the dark corner holding the helmet of Naboo. He walked with his chest held high. The toy pork on both sides, swayed with the fans and the processing plant, like guards standing in formation to welcome him. The processing plant, which exuded the greasy smell of pork and the fairy tale style plastic, was like a happy party that belonged only to him. There were several corpses on the ground. The invaders from World War III looked very much like the rioters and Amazon warriors of Paradise Island during World War II. Dick Grayson panted heavily and half knelt on the ground leaning on a rusty iron rod. There was still a piece of meat hanging on the hook, emitting a pungent smell. Blood flowed down the rusty iron rod and fell into his hands. We let one go. Dick Grayson heard Lizu's footsteps. His smile was very strange, like squeezing 3 flavors of cheese, fear, excitement, and madness, into a bowl, and mixing them randomly with his fingers. In Arkham, many of Lizu's patients had this look in their eyes. He had also seen it in Batman's eyes. You're just a lunatic. Boston Brand, the dead, floated beside Lizu, and he cursed Lizu mercilessly for letting the last young survivor of the circus take risks. After Lizu proposed the idea of turning from prey to hunter, Dick excitedly agreed. In order to protect the only brat he knew, he had to participate in it, and became the most important link in the Amazon people's feud. Lizu still ignored him. What should we do next? Let them kill each other? In the end, we wait in the wings, and eliminate them all? Dick, who couldn't hear the dead talking, stood up with the iron rod, and asked Lizu. His legs were shaking, which shouldn't happen to a mature acrobat. They will question each other, but they won't kill each other, Dick Lizu explained, as if he was stating the facts that should be taken for granted. He turned around and took 2 pieces of plastic pork from the iron hook and threw them on the ground. He seemed to feel that it was a bit inappropriate, so he picked up the pork and put it on the table. Finally, he raised the plastic meat saw in his hand and chopped it down fiercely. The plastic meat saw turned into a real iron tool in an instant, and it smashed the plastic pork in half with just its weight. Lizu turned the meat saw back into a toy with satisfaction, and put it into the inner pocket of his suit. He squatted down, picked up a piece of plastic pork and patted it. After confirming that the size was satisfactory to him, he stood up with the pork. Dick, who was waiting for Lizu's answer, looked at his meaningless actions and finally couldn't help but said, "What's next? We did so much, and even deliberately let one of them escape to report back, and there is no follow-up. What are your plans next?" His voice also began to change from questioning to a little crazy, and then to a roar. An opportunity to kill his enemies was right in front of him, and he didn't want to watch this opportunity slip away. Dick, it's not easy to create this opportunity to survive. Lizu shook the plastic pork in his hand. Let's go. Take some gifts. You don't want to meet Queen Diana empty-handed, right? What? Crazy Dick was stunned, and he found that he couldn't understand the man in front of him. He explained it simply, but he could never grasp the other party's real purpose. Whether it was killing the Amazons for revenge, or making up a false news to make them fight among themselves, it was just a means, not his goal. We have to walk out slowly step by step. Later walk out. Just walk out like this? Dick couldn't believe it. Those crazy women must want to kill them, just like Dick wanted to kill all of them. Of course Lizu walked out first, holding the Naboo helmet in his left hand and a piece of plastic pork in his right hand. After more than a minute, Dick didn't hear the sound of fighting. He followed him out doubtfully, only to find that Lizu was standing at the door, raising his hands to surrender. The red-haired woman in silver armor stared at the two of them. Take away the Naboo helmet, and also, take them back, and put them in the concentration camp first. The woman gave an order, and someone came immediately. After violently punching Lizu and Dick twice each, they snatched the plastic pork and the Naboo helmet from Lizu's hands, and took them away. You just surrender like that? What are we doing for? Dick wanted to ask loudly, but the long sword against his neck forced him to speak in a low voice. In order to avoid being killed as a burden when we surrender, people with value can live longer, but they only want that helmet. If there is no value in surviving, then make up some value yourself. I believe King Arthur will like this black pot, and Queen Diana will also be willing to believe this fact. Lizu's eyes followed the helmet of Naboo, and fixed on the woman in silver armor. The woman's ugly face improved a little, because of the helmet. What is this? She looked at the plastic block strangely. That's my toy, can you give it back to me? Lizu amplified his voice to ensure that most people could hear it. Then the soldiers who rushed into the pork processing plant and carried out the bodies of their companions also reported what they saw and heard. The pork processing plant that exuded the smell of greasy raw meat was indeed full of these plastic toys. Freak. The woman threw away the plastic and turned away. The two were blindfolded, and they could not see or hear too many other sounds. The slightest noise, while hurrying on the road, would attract a heavy punch. The mouth tasted salty and bloody, but no one wanted to continue tasting it. Why did you do all this? The dead Boston Brand asked in Lizu's ear. To see Diana, the Queen of the Amazon? Lizu answered in the same concise way. Madman. Boston Brand closed his mouth after leaving a short curse. The feet were hurrying on the road, walking faster and faster. If the pace was too slow, they would be pushed from behind. They walked for an unknown amount of time. Boom! Exclamation mark. The explosion and the heat wave knocked Lizu to the ground and pressed him to the ground. He could smell the slight smell of burning hair. Then a woman shouted. Then a group of women shouted. When the black cloth in front of his eyes was lifted and he regained light, he saw several people of different shapes in front of him. An English woman wearing heavy armor, a strange man standing at the edge of the sea of fire wearing a blue cotton coat and holding a pistol, and a red-skinned humanoid demon breathing fire. The woman in heavy armor smiled at Lizu and Dick. We are the Resistance Army. I wish you all a happy Mid-Autumn Festival and a happy holiday. Chapter 29 Toy Explosives. The town captured by the Amazons fell in a sea of fire and blood. Under the moon, the broken silhouettes of mountains and towers swayed. This place is like a ruined castle on the Rhine, with stone stairs covered with black spider webs in the ruins, or a haunted forest. The despair in the air makes people's hands and feet numb, unable to stand steadily, and finally fall to the ground with soft knees. They kneeled to beg for mercy from the Amazons, but they could only use the blades to exchange for the final piece. Everything is for that helmet, a helmet that is said to have the power of gods. In addition to the Amazons, there are also people who want to get this helmet. Once again, Penny Black drove her armor across the horizon to save the suffering victims. Although Britain has fallen and was occupied by the landing Amazons and became a colony of those women, as an experimental figure of the Royal Navy, Penny Black still survived. She has the Great Britain armor that the Royal Navy has built with all its efforts, an armor that only she can drive. The armor allows her to fly at supersonic speeds, has infinite strength, is invulnerable to swords and guns, and can even resist magical attacks and the cold arrows of the Amazons. After the demise of her country, she decided to continue fighting for justice and fight the Amazons and Atlanteans to the end. This time, the action is the same as before. Just add some extra instructions. The Amazons are looking for the legendary helmet of Naboo, and the rebels must get that thing, or destroy it, if they can't get it. Penny has an unmatched fighting power. She can withstand the bombardment and flames of her teammates, easily knock the struggling Amazons to the ground with her fists, and save 2 men. But the next development of the matter was a little beyond her expectations. The man rescued by the rebels did not thank him or be happy, although his mouth was always grinning. Penny Black still saw unhappiness in his eyes. He seemed to expect to be enslaved by the Amazons instead of being rescued by himself, so that he would have the opportunity to continue to experience precious freedom. "We are the rebels." Penny Black subconsciously stared at the face of the man in the green suit while speaking. "Rebels?" Dick Grayson's eyebrows jumped up, and his anger suppressed his voice. "Me too. What's your name?" "Dick Grayson. What about you?" Penny Black thought this was a good topic to continue, and she could talk to this weird looking man. Although this man looked abnormal, living in such a world, those who behave normally are crazy. Can the rebels go to the front line? Facing the question, Lee Zhu asked his own question directly. He was a little addicted to exploring the world. Not only the rewards brought by exploring the world, but also to satisfy his suddenly boiling collection addiction. He didn't refuse to add a collection named Diana or Aquaman to his toy collection, especially after knowing that the toys were only temporarily sleeping. However, this group of uninvited rebels disrupted his plan. The opportunity to meet Queen Diana disappeared. At the same time, he was relieved in his heart. At least he could stop the crazy behavior after his heart was beating wildly. Lee Zhu finally understood his own state. He was not crazy. It was just that after his heartbeat accelerated, he would lose his judgment of the difference in strength between the enemy and us, and he would not consider any consequences, including fear and death. Just like a mad dog, he always wanted to chase something. "He is an interesting person," said the red-skinned demon beside him with a smile. "He is the madman of Gotham." The man in a cotton coat holding a freezing gun stared at Lee Zhu. "I heard some members of the resistance army mention that after his boss, the Joker, died, he made a mess of Gotham." "The Joker?" Penny Black said confidently. "It sounds like an insignificant guy." Facing Lee Zhu's expecting eyes, Penny Black nodded. "Of course. Our resistance army will act on the battlefield. We welcome all warriors who are brave enough to go to the front line." Lee Zhu boarded the plane with Dick Grayson. Dick will go to the base to rest and recuperate, and then go to the battlefield, or save people who were invaded in other places. And Lee Zhu, with his strong proposal and the help of Captain Cold, the strange man in a cotton coat holding a freezing gun, can go straight to London. Britain has been occupied by Amazons, and France has just become a new colony. The main battlefield is also in France. What makes the rebels happy is that they got the Naboo helmet they wanted. London, Battersea, is completely ruled by Amazons. A man in a green suit and yellow Oxford shoes walked in the narrow passage under the tower. An hour ago, he received a mission. He joined several members of the rebels in the enemy's hinterland, including the leader of the rebels. And Lee Zhu's role is to help them secretly obtain the information from the Amazon training camp. This is an insignificant job. For example, the few members of the rebels who knew that Lee Zhu was from Gotham deliberately chased him to be cannon fodder. It seems that the rebels are not united. Where there are people, there are struggles and divisions. I'm a liar. Our actions have been discovered, and now a group of bitches are chasing us. A figure rushed out from the subway tunnel in front and came to Lee Zhu. The ribbon on Lee Zhu's arm, which belonged to the identity of the rebels, helped them recognize each other. The figure stopped, a man wearing a military green cape, a red mask, and holding 2 guns. There were several people following behind him. Several people that Lee Zhu was very familiar with. When will the support arrive? The trickster looked behind Lee Zhu. There was no one. Others also came one after another, shouting about the demons of Etrigan, a blonde woman with hair that seemed to be alive and flowing freely, a woman running in panic, and a humanoid cricket. Well, the support has arrived. Lee Zhu grabbed a handful of plastic toys from his pocket and scattered them on the ground. Hide, block the passage, at least let us run farther. Seeing this scene, the trickster immediately gave an order. This man who looked abnormal, his actions were even more abnormal. What harm could those toy explosives, even rocket-shaped toys, bring? He always knew in his heart that some people in the resistance army defected to Atlantis, and some defected to the Amazons. Today, the rear sent a madman directly. It must be because some people wanted him to die here. Okay. The panicked woman named Hyde nodded. She roared. Her body grew bigger, her clothes were torn apart by her body, and a bald monster with asphalt skin replaced the woman. The monster was extremely powerful and easily collapsed the corridor, blocking the pursuers behind him. Go, these obstacles won't last long. The liar turned to run away, but he noticed that Lizu stopped after running a few steps. What are you doing? We should go. The stage has not ended yet, and the leading actors cannot leave. Lizu opened his hands, as if waiting quietly. Boom, there was a vibration sound underground, as if something was trying to break through the obstacles and escape. Thick nosebleed flowed from Lizu's nostrils. Finally, a figure with a pair of white wings broke through the ground and rushed to Lizu, who was closest to her, as soon as he regained his freedom. A group of female superheroes or supervillains followed and rushed over. Tick, tick. Nosebleeds formed a line. Lizu raised his hands above his head suddenly, like a symphony reaching its climax. The toys piled up in a small pile on the ground suddenly grew larger and turned into a small mountain and turned back into real explosives and missiles. Can you help me with the fire? Lizu looked at the liar. I'd be happy to. Bang, the bullet flew out, the fire rubbed the explosives, a chain reaction, and finally, boom! Exclamation mark. The flames burned, and the heat waves slapped the corners of his clothes. Lizu spread his arms, and behind him was a sky-high flame. Chapter 30 Louise. The fire shot up into the sky. The massive gunpowder exploded, and the ground rumbled. The air was instantly filled with the pungent smell of saltpeter and gunpowder. Just a slight shake of the nose would cause choking and irritation to tears. The humanoid cricket flying in the air was most affected by the violent airflow, and it rolled far away in the air. The explosion was like the gods of the past stopping here. When the gunpowder and smoke dissipated, only a huge pit of the abyss was left. The huge explosion penetrated the two nearby underground railways, digging out a corner of the city hidden under the soil, and placing it in front of them. The woman with snow white wings, the woman like a female leopard, and the female warriors in heavy armor had turned into charcoal and fell into the pit, and it was difficult to tell them apart. This scene made the fleeing rebels breathe a sigh of relief. Where is Penny Black, the leader of the rebels? The liar asked Lizu. Did they only let you come? Although the man in the green suit in front of him behaved strangely, his ability was not to be underestimated. The explosion just now solved their crisis. Lizu walked forward slowly, his nose dripping with blood, his legs shaking, but this did not stop him from walking down the giant pit. Under the gaze of the rebels, he squatted in front of the winged woman, gently stroked her forehead, and said in a gentle voice, "Sweet dreams." What a gentleman. The woman with blonde hair fluttering in the air sighed, but the next moment, the special feelings on her face disappeared, her expression twitched, and there was fear. Under Lizu's palm, the dying eagle girl turned into a toy as big as a little finger. A doubt arose in everyone's heart. Turning a living person into a toy, then did the soul of the person who became a toy be liberated? Or would it be sealed in the toy forever? The wooden box that appeared out of thin air was like the strange treasure of the old gods in the legend. The things contained in it would definitely make people mentally collapse. In fact, just seeing Lizu turn people into toys was enough to make these people suffer a huge mental shock. It's terrible. Monster Hyde patted his thick chest and said in a muffled voice. The others nodded. No one wants to be turned into a fragile plastic toy forever. Let's retreat first. The leader, the trickster, said, before more dangers appear. Those crazy Amazon women will definitely not stop their pursuit. When facing the Amazons and Atlanteans, no matter how terrifying the power is, it can become their help. Humans are too fragile when facing Atlantis and Amazons. Hey. The trickster waved to Lizu in the giant pit. We are ready to retreat now. Let's go. There is a traitor who has informed our enemies. It is dangerous to continue to move now. Lizu stood up. This time he did not continue to act on his own, but took a step and ran to the front of several people in one breath. He is really a weirdo. The wings on the back of the cricket flapped and followed Lizu closely. The others also looked at each other, shrugged, and followed closely. It's time to retreat now. The rebels moved in London. In order to avoid encountering the difficult Amazons, they still walked through the underground tunnels. The subway tunnel leading to nowhere, the bat stuck in the darkest corner above the head, and the muffled footsteps, all mixed together, revealing a sense of weirdness everywhere. It seemed that an ambusher would jump out from any corner. This was a desperate escape, and they did not communicate with each other, and this silence was formed because the trickster tried to talk to Lizu but was rejected, which created a weird atmosphere. Lizu obviously did not give face to the leader of the rebels. He seemed to be thinking about other problems and was distracted. I don't know how long it took. Lizu went from being the first to the last, and then farther and farther away from the others, nearly 50 meters, 60 meters, 70 meters behind. There was a light in front to guide them, and they ran to the end. Finally ran out. Monster Hyde breathed a sigh of relief. It was not an easy thing to escape from the heavy encirclement of the Amazons. Wait, we seem to be missing someone. Cricket flew high in the sky, looking down at the few people and said, "Where is the weird guy in the green suit? Did he lose us?" Lizu fanned the wind in front of his eyes with some disgust. Leaving the subway and entering the sewer, it was really entering the blind spot of the Amazon people's surveillance. The group of strong guys who didn't look like women finally had the cleanliness that women have. "Help, help." A voice came from the depths of the sewer. The embarrassed woman, with her lower body soaked in sewage, reached out to Lizu for help. Lizu did not hesitate to help. He walked over and helped the woman up. "I'm Louise Lane. Are you a rebel?" She looked at the ribbon on Lizu's arm. "That's what the group of people with me call it." Lizu opened his eyes wide, pinched his chin, and looked at the woman in front of him, as if he was looking at an interesting toy. Louise twisted her body in discomfort. Her whole body was soaked in sewage. Her underwear was clinging to her body, and the eyes of the green-clad man in front of her seemed to be able to see through her clothes. This feeling made people uncomfortable. "Great, I was in the training camp in the UK before today. The cyborg was responsible for contacting me, but he hasn't contacted me for several weeks." Louise forced herself to cheer up. "Before we lost contact at the end, he told me that, if I was in danger, I could find the resistance. I brought the information I took out from the training camp." Louise Lane took out an instrument from her body, which looked like some kind of high-tech information storage device with built-in holographic projection. "This information must be very useful. I'm being hunted by the goddess of vengeance. She will soon eliminate all escape routes and find here." After saying that, she opened her eyes and waited for Lizu's reaction. Lizu didn't care about the information. "Not soon. They are already here." Lizu pointed behind Louise. Splash footsteps came from the dirty water behind her. A dozen women in armor moved in the sewage and slowly approached. Finally, they stopped more than 10 meters away. "There are men here. The leader should be the goddess of vengeance mentioned by Louise Lane." She looked at Lizu with disdain. The matriarchal society of the Amazon made them look down on men. "It's over." Louise was desperate. She also saw a few friends she knew in the crowd. She didn't expect that they also participated in this pursuit. Or it was because of them that she was caught. This pursuit ended before it even started. Facing a dozen fully armed women in front of him, Lizu calmly took out the plastic meat saw from his pocket. With a light flick, the meat saw turned from plastic to steel. The heavy weight pulled his body slightly tilted. "Will you scream?" he asked Louise. Chapter 31. The Awakened Killer Croc. "What?" Louise asked in confusion. Because of Lizu's strange question, she subconsciously ignored the huge meat saw that suddenly appeared in his hand. It may also be that she has seen too many strange things recently. Compared with them, Lizu's magician-like tricks can't stimulate her. Lizu continued, "I will throw something out later," and you scream bang. A wooden box fell from the sky and hit Lizu's feet. The sudden appearance of the thing attracted the Amazon people who were walking by. They looked at the box vigilantly, fearing that something terrible would jump out of it. Louise was the same. After all, Lizu looked too confident. The box opened. Lizu bent down and put his upper body into the box. He tried hard to search. During this time, no one took any action without authorization, and they were all waiting to see his next move. Found it. Everyone was stunned when they saw what Lizu held above his head. A human-shaped crocodile toy. It was as big as an adult's calf, with mouse gray scales piercing its body. It was made of soft plastic and could move its hands and feet. An ugly toy with good workmanship. "Take that, ha ha ha." He threw the weird crocodile toy. The toy landed in front of the goddess of vengeance and floated on the water. Nothing changed. I think he gave up the chance to join the concentration camp. Kill him. The goddess of vengeance snorted coldly. She didn't notice that among the soldiers behind her, 4 figures trembled when they saw the crocodile man toy. Why didn't you scream? Lizu turned to look at Louise Lane and questioned her very dissatisfiedly. Louise froze. After thinking a lot, she had to say, sorry. This was the only answer she could think of. Go. Led by the goddess of vengeance, a dozen Amazon warriors crossed the toy floating on the sewage water and strode towards Lizu and the others. They didn't have time to tangle with the madman. Lizu also took out a new toy from the box, which was a wall of Lego blocks. The wall of blocks fell into the water. Boom, in an instant, the blocks turned into a concrete wall with 2 posters hanging on it. Flying Grace and Family, a wonderful performance is coming tonight. The origin of this wall is obvious. The goddess of vengeance rushed forward. The toy fell into the water and turned into an old wall, blocking their way. The long sword cut the wall easily like cutting cheese, and it collapsed under the impact of the goddess of vengeance's shoulder. The goddess of vengeance broke through the wall and faced the cold and sharp meat saw swung and cut towards her. She raised her sword and narrowly avoided the disgusting and greasy wounds caused by the meat saw covered with barbs on her body. Ding. The meat saw and the long sword collided, and under the collision of sparks, Lizu was lifted up by the powerful force of the goddess of vengeance, and his body spun and rolled in the air. A shaky backflip turned over and landed. His body flexibility was somewhat beyond ordinary people. The meat saw gently shook off the dirty water. Drink. The goddess of vengeance raised her sword and chased Lizu. Suddenly, there was a scream from behind. There was also a terrifying roar. The goddess of vengeance turned her head, and the surface of the dirty water fluctuated. A slick dark figure passed by with water ripples. The water surface was torn apart, and a crocodile man who looked exactly like the toy rushed out. He bit down, and his huge jaws with gray squirrel-colored scales cut off the waist of an Amazon warrior. The blood dripped into the sewage, adding a bit of pungent blood to the sewage. The other Amazon warriors also reacted very quickly, and their long swords chopped on the scales, cutting off the scales that could not be broken. The attacked crocodile man attacked even more frantically. In the blink of an eye, most of the Amazon warriors were killed or injured. The crocodile man was also dying. Damn monster. The goddess of vengeance came to her senses, and a dark meat saw with a bright light swung over, biting off a few pieces of flesh on her arm. Her right hand holding the sword hurt, so she had to switch to her left hand to hold the sword and resist Lizu's attack with awkward parrying. Lizu stepped on one foot in the water, like an acrobat walking on a tightrope, bulging his eyes, swinging the meat saw and slashing ding, 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 and even had the upper hand for a moment. After his heartbeat accelerated, his brain would become extremely excited. He would abandon all thoughts about his own safety and choose the most suitable action plan. Now the most suitable action plan in his mind was to hold back the goddess of vengeance in front of him, even if it would cost him his life. The goddess of vengeance listened to the painful howls of her companions behind her and listened to them die one by one, and she had long lost the will to fight Lizu. She blocked Lizu's meat saw with a sword, twisted her wrist, and forcibly knocked him out, and at the same time turned around and pounced on Killer Croc. Plop. This time Lizu didn't stand firm, and he fell into the water. The stench flooded his nasal cavity, and some tried to get into his mouth. When Lizu subconsciously wanted to open his mouth to drink the stinky water, Louise on the side had already pulled him out of the sewage. Are you okay? She was a little worried about Lizu. Are there any other things in your box? There is a nuclear bomb. Lizu nodded. Seeing Louise's expression frozen, he laughed. Hahaha, I'm kidding, now is not the time to joke. She was a little annoyed. I'll throw something out later, and you run away. Lizu pointed to the distance and suggested seriously. Me. Louise felt warm in her heart. Although this man was a little strange, he made this decision for her, which was enough to move her. If she talked to anyone who knew Lizu, she would know that Lizu would never make plans for others, let alone stay behind. Take it. He threw a few pieces of plastic, and the plastic quickly turned into its untoyed appearance in the air. Plop, plop, plop. The water splashed high. Louise turned her head and ran at the same time. The thing that suddenly fell into the water scared the Amazon warriors who were fighting. It's raw meat. An Amazon warrior stabbed the water with a sword and picked up a large piece of pork. They understood that they were frightened by Lizu's strange ability. What he threw this time were just some tricks. It's you. Killer Croc also noticed Lizu. He gave up the Amazon warriors who brought him scars and pounced on Lizu, turning himself into a toy. This account is worth getting back than any other account. Unfortunately, Killer Croc pounced in the air and suddenly turned into a toy. We should be partners. Lizu looked at the Killer Croc toy flying in front of him, opened his hand with some regret, and happened to catch the toy. The majestic and ferocious Killer Croc turned back into a plastic toy again. Only Lizu's nosebleed and the body floating in the sewage in the distance can prove that Killer Croc really appeared just now. And he killed everyone. Chapter 32. Before the final battle. In the dim sewer, the stench swallowed up the smell of blood. After Killer Croc was forced to turn back into a toy, the battle was over. The Amazon warriors who had fought with Killer Croc for a long time, only the Goddess of Vengeance was in good condition, and 4 female warriors who had been hiding far away before the battle began. The others had become floating corpses on the water. You should pay the price. Lady Vengeance raised her sword and pointed at Lizu. I will cut off your legs and feet and throw you into a concentration camp. You will be tortured. She should have gritted her teeth when she spoke, and her momentum was like that of a female leopard. But unfortunately Lizu had a weird smile on his face all the time. Can I make a small request? Wait until you leave this stinky place before you do it. You definitely don't want to go behind my back, right? Lizu seriously helped them consider it and suggested. As a rebel, Lizu's value is not low. Humph. Take him away. The Goddess of Vengeance raised her long sword and turned to walk out. The body of the companion was soaked in the water and could only wait for the follow-up team to deal with it. The escaped Lois Lane would be recaptured later, but before that, they had to take Lizu away first, lest he take out something terrible from the strange boxes again. Lois Lane ran for several minutes. From the dark to the darker. She couldn't tell the direction, but just tried her best to open her ears to prevent anything from escaping. Her heart was still beating wildly, not knowing whether it was due to the physiological phenomenon caused by the intense running, or because she had just escaped from the fear and could not suppress her nervousness. I can't leave him alone. Thinking of the weird man, Lois hesitated and thought, and decided to turn around and run back. And those 4 women from Gotham. Thinking of the friends who lived in the same dormitory with her, and even trained with her, they would bring people to chase her. As soon as she escaped, Lois was full of hatred for the 4 women. When she went back, she found that the battle was over. Lizu disappeared without a trace. The Goddess of Vengeance and the 4 women from Gotham also disappeared with her. There were only corpses soaked in the sewage. The Goddess of Vengeance walked in front. Lizu's hands were tied, and he was guarded by 4 female Amazons, who surrounded him and walked forward step by step. Will you scream? Lizu asked this question mysteriously. He admitted that the awkward mystery was just a forced one. He preferred a more lively atmosphere to a dull one. Who knew that the 4 women actually nodded seriously and cooperated? Amazons are so easy to talk to. Lizu was surprised. Those Amazons wanted to chop him into pieces. Sir, it's sus. The woman in front of the left lowered her voice, fearing that the Goddess of Vengeance in front would hear it. He must have forgotten us. The woman in front of the right said affirmatively. Gotham, sewers, Killer Crocodile, sir? Another person tried to ask. The last one nodded vigorously, looking forward to Lizu. We met Amazons when we came to Europe. We were captured by Amazons and became warriors. Another person continued. They pinned their hopes on Lizu, hoping that he could take action again and help the 4 of them escape. Just like escaping from the sewers in Gotham. Though Lizu nodded seriously. Gotham? From his appearance, he didn't remember who these 4 women were. I said he forgot us. It's only been a month or 2. Rather than forgetting, it's better to say that Lizu didn't remember them at all. Ah. Screams came from behind, and the Goddess of Vengeance, who was walking in front with her head held high, turned around suddenly. To her relief, Lizu was still tied up and was being escorted obediently. What's the matter? She asked with a frown. These 4 people are her most promising recruits. They are hard working in training, and their will is in line with Amazon's. It's just that ordinary people's physiques are too weak, and these can be strengthened in training. The more important role of the 4 people is to prove that ordinary humans can also become Amazon warriors. Over there is a person who was stabbed. The goddess of vengeance looked in the direction of her finger and saw an Amazon warrior lying on the beach. She ran over and squatted beside the warrior. There was a sword stuck in the opponent's abdomen, which was an Amazon standard longsword. She's still breathing. Save her. Lizu shouted with his hands dancing beside him. You don't have to worry about it. The goddess of vengeance snorted coldly, raised her hand and gently patted the soldier's cheek to wake him up. Which team are you from? The soldier opened his eyes. His whites were red, and he couldn't focus. She was barely breathing. I'm back to Paradise Island? In London, the Queen's new colony. The goddess of vengeance spoke in a very gentle voice, completely different from the decisiveness when she ruthlessly hacked Lizu. I'll send you back for treatment immediately, and you will return to Paradise Island. The goddess of vengeance lowered her head and gently stroked the eyelids of the Amazon warrior Adeline. When she raised her hand, the soldier had closed his eyes forever. There's a traitor. The goddess of vengeance stood up, glared at Lizu, and then said to the 4 women, I'm going to report this to the Queen. Push him back. The resistance must have a lot of useful information. Maybe we can get more from him that we want to know. Yes. The goddess of vengeance took big steps, like a racing car at full power. Her heels kicked up dust, running farther and farther, until she disappeared completely. Swinging the sword, the ropes that bound Lizu were cut off. The 4 women followed Lizu in tacit understanding. As if returning to the past, the 4 down and out women followed him out of the abyss-like sewer. Let's go. Where to? Concentration camp. Isn't that your mission? Lizu asked curiously. You still want to go there, but that's... They were surprised at Lizu's decision. It's hard to leave that place once you enter. Lizu raised his head and looked at what was in front of him. Space-time gate. Cooling down. Countdown. 254H. World exploration degree. 45%. That's right. It seems a bit wasteful to just hide like this. We should go big. Batman and the others should be here too. It must be a pity to miss the final battle. He nodded seriously. Then go to the concentration camp. What? The 4 women were surprised. Is this decision any different from the previous one? 1. Choose to go to the concentration camp. To hide for 254 hours, waiting for the space-time gate to open and leave this chaotic world. 2. Go big and explore more. It seems that, no matter which option you choose, going to the concentration camp is the best choice. Lizu still entered the concentration camp. It was dilapidated, dark, and full of despair. The men were like livestock in a pen. They stared blankly at Lizu, who was escorted in. Countless men were sent in every day. He was the first one with a smile on his face. Chapter 33, Professor Speed and the Theatergoers. Lizu was lucky enough to get a single room as an exception. There was no bed in the room, and the room was separated from the next room by a rusty iron fence. I really miss the single bed in Arkham. He leaned against the wall and said to the man next door with a dull look in his eyes, do you know that the breakfast there is toast bread, and if you have just received psychological counseling, you can also get a glass of milk. The dull man's eyes had some light, and it was obvious that Lizu's nagging had brought him back to his senses. He twisted his body and turned his face to ensure that he could stay away from Lizu. I wonder how Dr. Arkham is doing, and whether he still likes to use electrotherapy so much. He curled up, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes. This is a good place where he can sleep well and peacefully. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Lizu seemed to have really accepted his fate, staying motionless behind the iron fence, and did not think about escaping prison. If Dr. Arkham saw him so well behaved, he would be very pleased, but the electrotherapy procedure must be necessary. On this day, he leaned against the wall and sat on the ground. He was fiddling with a Killer Croc toy. After counting the few items left in his prop box, he found that he still liked the scarred Killer Croc toy the most. There are still 12 hours left. Why hasn't it started yet? It's about to start. It must start. He talked to himself, smiling. His eyes were clear, but his smile was crazy. Outside the door, Two patrolling Amazon warriors passed by, and one of them looked at Lizu strangely. "Ignore him, he's just a lunatic," said the other Amazon warrior. "He always smiles so strangely. Why don't you kill him? He still has a very important role. Here I come." The Amazon warrior stopped and pointed forward. 4 female warriors came towards him. They were ordered by the goddess of vengeance to interrogate Lizu every day, trying to get some information about the resistance. It was this time again. Very punctual. Lizu swaggered out of the cell and followed the 4 women. People who had long been accustomed to this scene just called him a lunatic and no longer cared. Interrogation room. The room and windows were shut and locked from the inside. Lizu sat on a chair, still holding the killer croc toy in his right hand. The 4 arrogant female warriors were now unusually respectful. Queen Diana left today. She was very angry. "It should be about the traitor. The rebels have been looking for you. I heard that King Arthur has a secret weapon." After Queen Mera died, he was very angry. He seemed to be ready to release that weapon, which would destroy most of the life on land. "It's finally time to start." He stood up with the help of the table and threw the killer croc toy on the ground. Using the toyification ability many times has increased his body's tolerance for overloaded use of the ability. What's more, he has rested well during this period. He can't kill it alone. The 4 women looked at Killer Croc with disgust, but they were also happy. The man-eating monster that once tortured them has become a toy, and its soul has been imprisoned in the plastic toy shell forever and can only be used as a tool to obey Lizu's orders. Lizu did not answer. He stared at the Killer Croc toy. His morbid laughter occurred. Boom! The humanoid crocodile tore through the iron cage and bit off the thigh of the Amazon warrior closest to him. His stomach was filled with blood and flesh, and he felt a little warm. "I know you are nearby, bastard," he roared. He wanted to find the bastard in the green suit with a weird smile on his face. Before he found the figure of the bastard, more Amazon warriors rushed over and surrounded him. "It's you." Killer Croc sneered at the fully armed Amazon warriors. "These women have made him suffer a lot. Before killing that damn guy, he can vent his anger on them first." The mouse gray scales trembled. "It just so happens that I'm hungry." On the streets of London, Lizu staggered out of the narrow alley and squatted on a bench by the roadside. At the other end of the bench was a black, rotten, and strange thing. He walked out of the gate of the Amazon concentration camp slowly. The 4 women were sent by him to find the rebels. He would not say it clearly. The reason why he did not let them continue to follow was because he was too lazy to remember their names. Boom! The ground shook, and a man with a steel fork and golden scales fell from the sky. World exploration degree. 47%. Hey, Lizu grinned. "I used to love you, but since you killed Mera, I swear." The man raised his head and shouted. A light fell from the sky, and the speed exceeded the limit of Lizu's vision. Only with a clang, the man raised the steel fork to block the long sword, blocking the light with sparks. Did Lizu see the true identity of the light? The beautiful queen in armor. World exploration degree. 48%. Aquaman Arthur and Queen Diana. The ground under their feet shook and cracked. The sound of the weapons colliding tickled the ear canal, and it itched. "So, you are the clown of this world?" The voice suddenly came from Lizu's ear. Lizu turned his head in surprise. The dark object just now disappeared, replaced by an acquaintance. He was wearing a yellow battlesuit, and his ears were decorated with lightning symbols. There was also this symbol on his chest. He sat on the bench with his shoulders folded and looked at Lizu curiously. "The clown is actually a yellow man?" He Lizu looked at the person next to him and laughed more and more happily. Ha. He laughed loudly. "What are you laughing at?" The man was a little unhappy. He raised his right hand and his arm vibrated at a high speed, and it became faster and faster, forming a phantom. "I can easily take your heart out of your chest. This is so fast that your body won't even know. Do you want to see your heart with your own eyes? You will have the opportunity to touch it closely with your hands." He didn't like Lizu's crazy laughter and tried to use fear to regain his aura. However, when he stared at Lizu carefully, his body couldn't help but want to laugh. It was an uncontrollable influence from the spiritual level. Ha. Lizu held his stomach and bent over. He was still laughing more and more crazily, and coughing with laughter. World exploration degree. 50%, 0.51%, 52%, 53%, 54% after this person appeared, the world exploration degree grew wildly for the first time in a long time. It didn't stop until 57%. And Lizu could clearly see that he had obtained something brand new. Halo, influencer, an indescribable spiritual influence, riding on the express train of cosmic energy, willfully spreading influence with Lizu as the center. Forget it. The man put down his arm that was shaking at high speed. Even a madman like you would have a hard time surviving in this battlefield. He was very confident. You may not know that everything in this world is caused by a superhero's longing for his mother. Isn't it interesting? And I can see all this without doing anything. This is a wonderful world, a perfect world. He was still talking to himself, but found that Lizu was staring at him strangely. It was like looking at a madman. Being stared at by a madman with the eyes of a madman was disgusting. This world is not interesting at all, Lizu said seriously. It's surprising to hear from the Joker that a chaotic world is boring. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Reverse Flash. You can also call me Professor Speed. The show is about to begin. It's time for me to watch it. Reverse Flash stood up and disappeared from Lizu's sight in an instant. He was so fast that he seemed to be wiped out of thin air. Lizu's attention was drawn back to the fact that Queen Diana was still fighting with Aquaman. Their battle affected several buildings and caused missile-level destruction. The world of superheroes is really something that makes people love and fear it at the same time. Chapter 34, The Lasso of Truth. Again. The smile on Lizu's face suddenly withered for no reason, just like the sudden laughter for no reason just now. He stood up from the chair with his knees in a serious manner, his body shaking a little. With his right hand, he gently patted the dust off his clothes. He shook off the water drops hanging on the collar and rolling down the nylon suit. The salty and wet sea breeze continued to blow against his cheeks. The sword flashed. The battle between the two rulers has not yet stopped. But the battle is coming to an end. Because Lizu saw with his own eyes that one of the arms of the Sea King flew into the sky and blood was spilled all over the ground. The one-armed Sea King fell into an absolute passive position in the face of the battle. Diana. When Queen Diana was about to end the life of the Sea King with a sword, a roar came from the sky. The anger fell from the sky with the pouring thunder and lightning, and the broad electric pole covered several buildings in front of him. The golden thunder and lightning raged, and Lizu rolled on the ground for several times before he barely escaped the range of the thunder and lightning. The free electricity in the air still paralyzed his body and stung his muscles and nerves. Boom, he stomped his feet and jumped up, lying on the bench, and the chair under his feet turned into a plastic toy in an instant. Finally, the follow-up action of the electric current continuing to drill into the body was avoided. The electric heat quickly melted the plastic toy, emitting a pungent smell of burning plastic. Diana. The lightning dissipated. It was Shazam. Puff. Wonder Woman swung her sword mercilessly and pierced the chest of Aquaman, her old lover. Diana. Aquaman fell in a pool of blood, and the body of the Atlantean kept him from dying so quickly. Ha ha ha. He laughed while spurting blood, and his internal blood clots, saliva, tears, and anger rushed out together. Release the final weapon. Aquaman died, very abruptly. In addition to bringing Lizu 3% of the world's exploration level, he only left behind a puzzling final weapon. But the three people at the scene had no intention of paying attention to these. Queen Diana confronted the furious Shazam. As for Lizu, he curled up on the toy bench, and the surrounding thunder field made him dare not act rashly. Just like he said, he was afraid of death. Another great battle, very exciting, but somewhat dull in Lizu's eyes. He had completely lost interest in this broken world, in every sense of the word. In just over 10 minutes, the battle was decided again. Queen Diana took the opportunity to tie up Shazam with the lasso of truth. Can you tell me your spell? No one could resist the power of the lasso of truth. Shazam struggled, but still had to say the word Shazam. The thunder fell, and Shazam turned into 6 children. In front of the furious Queen Diana, what fate could 6 powerless children have? The Amazon swords would not stop swinging, even if their enemies were just children who had lost their divine power. Snap the truth lasso bound Lizu, and she looked at him with contempt from the corner of her eyes. It's your turn to answer my question. Space-time gate, cooling down, 8h34 meters, 21s. Lee Zhu looked down at the truth lasso that bound him to death. His heart began to beat wildly, and the smile on his face became more and more intense. Queen Diana, like a hunter holding a rope net, has the right to decide how to deal with her prey. Aren't you afraid? She asked. The smile on Lee Zhu's face made her feel something was wrong. Afraid? Lee Zhu still smiled and answered. The person bound by the truth lasso will never lie, but he shouldn't look afraid. Diana began to doubt whether the truth lasso really worked. What are you laughing at? Laughing at this interesting world. Don't you find this world interesting? Facing Queen Diana's question, he answered fluently, not like being bound by the truth lasso and being restrained. This world is interesting. I only know that this world is a mess. Queen Diana pulled the glowing rope and raised her sword high and walked towards Lee Zhu. She was somewhat disgusted with this smile, like a strange smile that was forced on her face, even though she knew the world was a mess. It was like she saw through everything, or it was like a silly smile that she didn't understand anything. In short, it was very annoying. Two beams of red light fell from the sky and pierced through Queen Diana's chest. A figure as thin as noodles fell from the sky. Noodle Man was suspended in front of Lee Zhu, with Queen Diana, the armless Aquaman, and Shazam's body under his feet. He did not help Lee Zhu, but bent down and took the lasso of truth from the dead Queen Diana. He pulled the rope straight and asked, how can we explore the truth of this world? How can we gain true freedom? Lee Zhu stared at Noodle Man. His nose was breathing hot air, and his eyes were bloodshot. Veins bulged and his nose was bleeding wildly. He grinned, blood oozing from the corners of his mouth. His smile was scarlet. Hehe, crazy. What? Chaos, madness, is the essence of this world. Under the control of the truth lasso, Lee Zhu could not control himself, and could only tell the truth he knew. What about freedom? How to pursue it? Noodle Superman asked. He was sure that Lee Zhu could give him the answer he wanted. Didn't you get it? How does the sun feel? He asked back. Very warm. Congratulations. This world is so bad. Lee Zhu laughed. Why don't you laugh a little? You don't know how to get freedom, and you don't know the essence of the world. Noodle Superman loosened the truth lasso. He now understood that what Lee Zhu said in the military base before was just a verbal misleading to him. He is just a mortal, a somewhat neurotic mortal. Perhaps the only thing that is extraordinary about him is that he is also on the road to explore the world. Noodle Superman soared into the air, tore through the clouds and left. He killed Queen Diana casually, as if he had done something insignificant. The war situation in the world and occupation are insignificant to him. He might find a place to hide and bask in the sun, or he might go to pursue a deeper world. This thing is really strong. Lee Zhu rolled and struggled. The truth lasso locked him tightly, unable to move. The toy-like body was blocked by the golden divine power, and it was difficult to move forward. But he still had a nosebleed. He struggled in the pile of corpses, rolling on the ground scorched by electricity, but he couldn't get loose. Boom, another person came and fell heavily on the ground. Two figures with lightning. One was Professor Speed, who had just chatted with Lee Zhu, and the other was Flash Barry Allen. This is all your fault. The Flash roared. Barry, the most interesting thing about this world is that you caused all this, and I didn't do anything. Professor Speed enjoyed this moment very much. Even if countless fists hit his face like a rainstorm, his voice still sounded happy. Batman was hanging on the rope and came late. He landed beside Lee Zhu. It was not easy to meet acquaintances on the battlefield. Are you free? Lee Zhu struggled to get up from the ground. This thing is too tight, and I can't digest what I ate last night. Is this Diana's lasso of truth? Batman picked up the rope and stared at Lee Zhu with scalded eyes. Again. Lee Zhu had a bad feeling. Sure enough, Batman said in a deep voice, then answer me a question. You are not from this world? Yes. Thank you Galbi for the reward of 1000 starting coins, and thank you Khan Chenshi Yu for the reward of 100 starting coins. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, The Flash Express. Facing the power of the lasso of truth, Lizu couldn't say anything. The fighting Flash and Reverse Flash stopped. Another person who didn't belong to this world appeared. He didn't have super speed, and even his strength was pitifully weak. There are no toy people in my world. Flash looked at Reverse Flash. He suspected that Lizu was caught by Reverse Flash and brought to this world. Reverse Flash didn't bother to explain, just laughed softly. He liked the story to develop in an uncontrollable direction. Seeing the increasingly deep sorrow on Flash's face, he felt extremely satisfied. His satisfaction had no limit, if Flash's sorrow also had no limit. Lizu was not untied, and Batman didn't ask another question. He just curled up on the ground, sniffing blood, feeling the madness that belonged to the battlefield. The blood soaked into his collar along his neck, and the cold blood was reignited by his chest. Lizu shuddered. He didn't like sticky things getting into his body. His whole body was stained with blood. This was not a toy man at all. Shouts came from a distance. The sound of fighting, and bullets were getting closer and closer. Nearby, the Flash was no match for Professor Zoom, and was knocked away by the fist, wrapped in the Speed Force. Their fight had already exceeded the limit of Lizu's vision. I have a way to kill that fast-running bastard. Do you want to try? Lizu, who was still tied up by the glowing rope, put forward his suggestion. He seemed to always be able to find reasonable bargaining chips in desperate situations to make himself look more valuable. Batman did not speak, but just pulled the lasso of truth. The power automatically controlled Lizu's mouth and said the simple plan. You are too slow, Barry. Professor Zoom dodged the Flash's fist again, hugged his shoulders, and looked like a teacher watching his hard-working students with a leisurely posture. On the other hand, the Flash was exhausted and panting. Even stronger than fatigue was his anger. After laughing, Professor Zoom also launched an attack, and his fists were even faster. In his eyes, the Flash seemed to have become an ordinary person who slowed down. He increased his full speed, and his fists left after images. Of course, all this only exists in the Speed Force. In the eyes of ordinary people, they are just short flashes of light, fleeting lights. Tell me how to kill that guy who runs very fast. Batman swung the lasso of truth in his hand. His voice was amplified to ensure that Professor Speed and the Flash could hear it. This is not in line with Batman's usual image, but in this completely broken world, any action taken by the abnormal Batman seems to be in line with reasonableness. Lizu on the ground did not hesitate at all and opened his mouth. Of course I know this guy's weakness. Not good. Professor Speed felt uneasy. After being tied up by the lasso of truth, he couldn't lie. If Lizu could really tell his weakness, it meant that he really had a weakness that even he himself didn't know. He didn't want to be defeated by the Flash in a game where he had won a perfect victory. It would definitely make him more uncomfortable than killing him. Seeing the happy smile on the Flash's face when he succeeded was definitely the most severe punishment. Professor Zoom's body was filled with lightning of the Speed Force. He turned and rushed towards Lizu, his arms vibrating at high speed, ready to seal his mouth forever. He ran faster than he spoke. Unfortunately, the Flash behind him was equally fast and successfully intercepted him. He even turned from defense to offense, tied up Professor Zoom, dragged him out of the high-speed movement of the Speed Force, and appeared in front of Batman and Lizu. I don't know. Lizu laughed strangely. His eyes seemed to have seen through the light and saw the astonishment on Professor Zoom's face. Bang! A clean shot. Ding dang. The shell fell from a high altitude, bounced 3 or 4 times at the feet, and finally rolled away, rolling to Lizu, who was tied up by the lasso of truth. Batman raised his pistol, and it was self-evident who fired the gun. This was a simple trick, giving Flash a chance to regain his rhythm in the fierce attack of Professor Zoom. The only thing that exceeded Lizu's expectations was that Batman actually shot Professor Zoom in the head. This further accelerated the process of ending all this, making his subsequent plans impossible to implement. Reverse Flash lowered his eyes and looked at Lizu, who had already untied the lasso of truth and rubbed his arms to get up from the ground. Everything just now was an act. Next to Lizu, Batman, with a gloomy face, was holding the lasso of truth and looking at him. There was also the Flash rushing behind him. The pain between his eyebrows brought Professor Speed back to his senses. Lizu rubbed the marks on his wrists, his body swaying. The most real thing in the world is that plans cannot keep up with changes. He glanced at the lasso of truth in Batman's hand. It was a very interesting toy, but Batman didn't look like someone who was willing to give up a toy. Professor Speed was stiff, and finally he stopped, his eyes locked on Lizu. "You won." Huh. Lizu was very surprised, but Professor Speed had already fallen to the ground and turned into a corpse. What did Professor Speed mean? Before Lizu had time to think about what Professor Speed said, he was pulled by the collar and moved at high speed. "Run, Barry!" Batman shouted. Without Professor Speed to snatch the Speed Force, the Flash's running speed began to increase rapidly. Now Lizu just wanted to ask why he was brought along, but the wind blocked his mouth and even pulled his face out of shape. His hair seemed to be burning. "You must bring this guy back, Barry. Make sure that world returns to normal." Batman's voice was behind him, and the strong wind that finally filled Lizu's ears drowned it all out. Lizu was forced to take the Flash train. They rushed out of London and ran wildly on the surface of the English Channel. The speed exceeded Lizu's brain thinking speed. He had no idea what happened. It was just that at the last moment, when he was taken away by the Flash and left this Flashpoint world, he saw the dazzling light coming from the English Channel. A continent was smashed into pieces. That might be the ultimate weapon of Aquaman. When the word ultimate weapon appeared in Lizu's mind in its entirety, he didn't even have time to sigh at the power of the ultimate weapon before he found himself in a strange place. The people here were wearing yellow prison uniforms. Everyone is like a beast trapped in a cage, showing their fangs wantonly. "I think you belong here. When I go back to sleep, we will meet again." The Flash threw Lizu into one of the cells, and then turned into lightning and disappeared. "Well, why is there one more person here?" The patrolling prison guard happened to come over and looked at Lizu, who was wearing a green suit and covered in blood. "Strangely, it is normal for someone to escape from prison, but it is very abnormal to have more people in the prison. Excuse me, where is this place?" Lizu tried his best to show his friendliness. "No matter why you came here." The prison guard showed a bad smile. "It's impossible to leave here. This is Blackgate Prison. Are you interested in making a record with me?" Lizu also smiled, gladly. "Thank you Commoner NDM for the 100 starting coins reward." Chapter 36 Blackgate Prison. Space-time gate, cooling down, 7h3 meters, 21s. In the silent corridor, turn right from the long road at an obtuse angle. The people here are really unfriendly. Lizu raised his hands tied by the silver bracelet and wiped the blood from his nose. His current state does not look good. He has just been freed from the binding of the truth lasso, and the divine power has seriously eroded his spirit. Even so, his self-familiar personality has not settled down. The guys here are all murderers, robbers, rapists, of course. Not all of them are against women. The prison guard looked at Lizu with a malicious expression, with a hint of meaning. "So, I prefer blue and white clothes, and yellow happens to be the color I hate the most," Lizu said seriously. "Really? That's a pity." The prison guard closed his mouth and stopped talking. The two crossed two areas and walked into an office. Before entering, Lizu paid special attention to the name written on the sect, Warden Joseph. Entering the door, a man in a striped suit sat behind the desk. The dark face and the thick lips that gave people the impression that he might rap at any time made it difficult for Lizu to find a memorable point in this prison warden. After careful consideration, he actually found that the word prison warden was the only characteristic of the other party. Warden Joseph was flipping through a newspaper in his hand. There was a TV hanging on the wall to his left. It was broadcasting interviews with Gotham celebrities. "Mr. Bruce Wayne, how are you going to spend this night? When will TV news stop playing gossip?" Warden Joseph picked up the remote control unhappily. He changed the channel. "Calendar Man has been arrested. It is said that this was done by Batman, Sheriff Gordon." On a snowy day, the microphone was raised in front of the middle-aged man with a resolute face. "There is no Batman in this world. That's just your imagination." Sheriff Gordon righteously denied the reporter's judgment. "I'm so glad you're still alive." Lizu looked at the figure on the TV and said to himself with relief, the last time he saw this guy, he was lying in a pool of blood. Lizu was also confused about the Joker, his old boss. If he was trying to feel the chaos, the Joker was the chaos itself. So, this gentleman. Warden Joseph turned off the TV. He frowned as he looked at Lizu, who was covered in blood and looked miserable. Can you tell me how you ended up here? He picked up the steaming coffee on the table and threw 2 sugars into the coffee cup. Stir gently with a teaspoon. I don't believe anyone would deliberately escape to Blackgate prison and choose to spend Christmas Eve in this hell. He kept his eyes on Lizu's face, looking calm and composed. Is this hell? Lizu was curious. He had just left a hell. But in the face of the warden's question, he still cooperated and answered, Flash, I think he should send me back to Arkham. Lizu pondered, but he seems to have a problem with his brain. I don't know why he sent me here. If a person runs too fast, his brain may not work well. Flash. Warden Joseph's answer surprised Lizu. Who is that? I have only heard of Batman. In fact, 2 years ago, I still liked the rumors about Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. Not a cloaked weirdo. Arkham Asylum. If you want to go to the asylum, you still need to fill out a certificate and an application, but they are not open on Christmas Eve. Really? Lizu was silent, and the corners of his mouth could not help but rise. Why did the Flash send him to Blackgate prison instead of Arkham Asylum? The Flash knew that Lizu was not a lunatic? Of course not. Then why? There is only another explanation. Even if the flashpoint was changed, the Flash still inevitably had an impact on the world. For example, during this period of time, Batman was still just an urban legend. After the world was modified, the Flash's memory was inevitably modified. Therefore, in the Flash's memory, there was only Blackgate prison in Gotham, and there was no Arkham Asylum, where talents were imprisoned. Everything may not have started yet, or it may be that everything is completely different. So sir, can you answer my question just now? Warden Joseph put down his coffee cup. I forgot. Maybe I killed someone. Or maybe I was kidnapped here. Lizu spread his hands. There are more than 7 hours left before leaving this world. For the time being, doing nothing is a better way. Can I go back and stay? He asked. You are the first person who wants to live here, said Warden Joseph, but this is your last chance to leave. If you give up the opportunity to explain, Blackgate prison doesn't mind having one more life sentence prisoner forever. Warden Joseph may be more interested in the heavy snow on Christmas Eve than listening to a person talk about his origins. Can I eat my Christmas turkey in advance? Lizu asked. My share. Take him back. We will have one more permanent guest here in the future. Warden Joseph waved his hand and asked the prison guard to take Lizu away. Bang, the office door slammed. Warden Joseph rubbed his eyebrows. What a lunatic. How did he get in? But I have another problem to solve now. Lizu returned to his room, a new room. He was allowed to take a hot bath and change into a new set of clothes, a set of yellow prison uniforms that he hated the most. Someone outside sang Christmas songs. There were also choruses. Lizu turned over in bed. After sleeping for 7 hours, he said goodbye to this repaired world. But sleepiness never came as expected. So he turned over, moved to the railing, and greeted the one-eyed middle-aged man who was also locked behind the iron bars. Merry Christmas. The one-eyed middle-aged man heard the voice, stopped what he was doing, and glanced at him. He was doing push-ups just now, with his feet on the bed. Again and again. Very powerful. Have you heard of the toy man? Lizu asked in a familiar manner. The man also moved his one eye away, not bothering to put it on Lizu. I should have been very famous a few minutes ago, but I can't guarantee that there is no other toy man in this world. He held the iron railing, as if in deep thought. After a long pause, do you like toys? Humph. This was the last answer of the one-eyed man. He stopped exercising, and lay on the bed with his eyes closed to rest. He looked like a don't bother me expression. In the prison next door, the muscular bald head of the little giant yelled at Lizu. Shut up, yellow-skinned pig. You disturbed my sleep. Hehe. Lizu smiled, and really shut his mouth obediently. Thank you Sansacho and Naraku for the 500 starting coins reward. Thank you BNINILA for the 100 starting coins reward. And thank you Fanchi Meng for the 500 starting coins reward. Chapter 37. An uneasy Christmas Eve. For more than 10 minutes, the sound of hurried footsteps broke the silence. It was Warden Joseph of Blackgate Prison. He staggered when he ran, and there was coffee stain on his right sleeve. There was a bruise on the right side of his face, maybe from the stick. The wound on his forehead must have hit the corner of the wall opposite the warden's office. That place looked like a high incidence section of traffic accidents. If you don't look up when walking, you will definitely hit it hard, and the swelling will not go down for 2 or 3 weeks. Behind Warden Joseph were 2 people who walked slowly, like wildcats chasing mice. You said that if I cooperate, it won't happen. Warden Joseph shouted anxiously. Bang! The iron bull bat fell mercilessly on Warden Joseph's back, and the warden rolled over and lay on the ground. Behind him were 2 strange guys wearing black masks. You should know him. He won't leave anyone alive, said one of the men wearing a black mask. Warden Joseph, whose legs were shaking unruly, tried to crawl on the ground on his knees. The 2 guys wearing black masks were still enjoying the fun of playing with their prey. In the cell opposite Lizu, the one-eyed middle-aged man who pretended to sleep turned over and continued to lie still. The muscular bald bastard who had roared at Lizu before shrank his neck in fear, as if the 2 people holding iron bars were something scary. Or rather, the mask represented something even scarier. Christmas Eve, surprisingly calm. No, you can't do this, Warden Joseph shouted as he got up from the ground. Without anyone to stop him, he could run away with his shaking legs. The 2 people wearing black masks chased after him. The prison area, where Lizu was also quiet. Boom! Violent vibrations and noises could be heard outside. The silent prison began to boil. This was a signal of jailbreak and riot, and several people had already stared at Lizu, not hiding the fierce light in their eyes. The muscular bald bastard was even more so. They obviously wanted to use Lizu to relieve the itch of their fists. This place doesn't look safe. Lizu sat on the bed and scratched his head. The prop box fell beside the bed, and half of Lizu got into the box to search. Except for a few doll toys, the room was empty. He stood up, clutching the meat saw toy, and easily turned the iron bars into toys with his left hand, and walked out of his room. Lizu stood in the aisle, stepping on the cold stone floor barefoot. His toes moved slightly, and the ground was really cold. It's really cold. While he was standing in the aisle in a daze, the prisoners in the cells on both sides were all attracted by him. They were all shocked. He turned the indestructible prison iron bars into elastic plastic and walked out so swaggeringly. Even the one-eyed middle-aged man who was pretending to sleep on the bed sat up and looked at Lizu quietly with a strong interest in his one eye. Well, let's do it first. Lizu nodded, as if he had made a decision. He walked towards the door of the one-eyed middle-aged man's cell, then suddenly turned and came to the next door. The muscular bald bastard saw Lizu standing in front of his cell door and yelled at him in a cowardly manner, "Asshole, do you want me to smash your head into your stomach?" The ability to turn iron bars into toys is so weird that it makes people's hair stand on end. He doesn't want to test his muscles and steel, which one is stronger. Lizu grabbed the iron gate with his left hand. The toy iron gate turned into a plastic toy in an instant. Lizu smiled and raised the meat saw in his hand. The toy plastic meat saw turned into an iron blade at some point, and it was shining with lard. The coarse cloth tied to the handle of the meat saw was black and shiny. Puff. Something was splashed on the wall. Some liquid passed through the toy iron bars and splashed on the ground. Something else splashed on the roof. The smell in the air was insane. In conjunction with the screams, all the guys who had looked at Lizu with terrifying eyes before subconsciously shrank their necks. "I just cursed you. Why? Don't kill me, please." The bald muscle bastard's painful voice was filled with disbelief and begging. "You really should continue to roar, like you did just now." Lizu raised the meat saw. The red on the knife and the red on his cheeks reflected his smile and the contempt in his eyes. An angry bastard deserves a more glorious exit than a cowardly bastard begging for mercy. As he said that, he slowly put down the raised meat saw. No one knew what happened. It was only after a short contact that people could tell who had the absolute upper hand and who was defeated through the screams of the muscle-bald bastard. Lizu dragged the heavy meat saw and walked out in a dull manner. The muscle-bald bastard trembled and breathed a sigh of relief. The pool of blood under him was piling up more and more. Even if the meat saw with teeth hanging on it did not fall, how long could he survive? Lizu walked out dragging the meat saw, his body shaking a little. It can be seen that he did not rest thoroughly, and the meat saw is still too heavy for him. Someone has already escaped from the cell. Warden Joseph is being hunted by the mysterious Black Mask organization. Blackgate Prison is now in a free state. This is a great opportunity to launch a rebellion. Some people also took advantage of the chaos to release the locked guys. However, these guys who escaped from their respective cells were weirdly crazy, but they all had a tacit understanding to hide from Lizu far away. The prisoners rioted, and the prison guards of Blackgate Prison were counterattacked at the first time. Lizu came to the cell door of the one-eyed middle-aged man. Even though there was a riot here, the one-eyed middle-aged man remained unmoved in his cell. Hearing Lizu's footsteps, the one-eyed middle-aged man sat up from the bed for a rare time and stared at Lizu with his one eye. How to leave here? Lizu asked directly, as if he was sure that the other party knew how to leave. How much is the price? The other party asked back. Money? Lizu was surprised. Can I buy on credit? Lizu wandered alone in Blackgate Prison. The yellow prison uniform was his pass. The prisoners were quickly occupying the place while he walked forward easily. Even though he had been here for 10 minutes, he still couldn't leave. Obviously, the one-eyed middle-aged man didn't accept credit. Found it. Lizu stopped. At the corner in front, he saw a group of guys wearing black masks, and one of them was surrounded in the middle. Batman is coming, someone reported. Leave first before leaving. The guy wearing a black mask turned his head and glanced at Lizu. He also noticed Lizu. Boom, the plastic bomb blew up the wall. The black figure ejected in an instant. The cape unfolded. He was like a humanoid bat with bat wings spread out. The Batman of the repaired timeline world appeared. This also meant that Lizu's next 7 hours would not be too peaceful. Thank you Duan Changran for the 100 starting coins reward. Thank you Wufu_Big Show for the 100 starting coins reward. Thank you Yoshin Banri for the 500 starting coins reward. Chapter 38 New Employment Relationship. Stop him. The Black Mask, who was obviously the leader, pointed at Batman casually. The cold wind of Christmas Eve poured in from the stairs and hit Lizu's light yellow prison uniform. There were snowflakes in the cold wind. He was barefoot and his feet were numb from the cold. The wind was really cold. Batman was stopped by a group of thugs wearing black masks, while Lizu, who was wearing prison clothes, was ignored like an invisible man. On the other side, a middle-aged man in police uniform was held by 2 black-masked thugs. You can't do this, Roman. You can't do this. I'm the police chief. The chief of the Gotham Police Department was thrown into a small closed space. Someone pulled the gate. The room was soon filled with green poisonous gas. The chief of the police department had not stopped shouting, "You can't kick me away after I have done so many things for you. You said we are together." The green poisonous gas made his voice sound sobbing and unclear. Of course I can. The black masked man adjusted his collar and gently flicked off the black hair with his right hand. His voice sounded relaxed and leisurely. The victor's floor has been cleaned, but there is no place for you to stand on it. Mr. Police Chief. The black mask raised his head high, as if kicking a man who thought he was a hero into a pile of criminals who were about to be hanged. The disbelief on the police chief's face could make him happy all day. The black mask turned his face to Lizu. Perhaps the person under the black mask was suddenly full of interest in Lizu. He walked in front of Lizu. The black mask covered all his expressions, revealing only a pair of eyes. "You are like an old friend." He stretched out his right hand, as if he wanted to shake hands with Lizu and say hello, but this action only lasted for a second. The next moment he put his hand away and grabbed a pistol from his pocket. It can be seen that he prefers this way of greeting. The muzzle of the gun pointed at Lizu's head. "Are you interested in working together? Whether it is wealth, women, or fear, everything is available here." Ignoring the pistol pointed at Lizu's head, he could barely think that this was an olive branch thrown by the black mask. In the cold wind, shivering, with blue ankles, Lizu did not look like a master, and even the toy meat saw in his hand made him look more like a mental patient. Everyone was curious about Black Mask's invitation. Only Lizu was not. Maybe, in his eyes, there was nothing worth being curious about Black Mask, a poor guy who would die early. He was always too lazy to remember the unimportant supporting role, even if this supporting role seemed to have unlimited scenery now. This is just a supporting role, and he was too lazy to think about why the supporting role had to do something. He only knew that his life was now in the hands of this supporting role. What is my first job? When Lee Zhu asked the question, his eyes turned to Batman, who was fighting hard in the back. That's right. Black Mask patted Lee Zhu on the shoulder and confirmed his guess. Come on, I hope to hear good news from you soon. Black Mask left quickly, leaving Lee Zhu, who looked very thin, no matter how he looked, to stop Batman. This was a joke, a vulgar joke. Perhaps when Black Mask left, the laughter that could not be hidden in the mask was because he thought of Lee Zhu's thin figure, beaten all over by Batman. Who can expect a thin and trembling Asian to beat the urban legend of Gotham? Instead of expecting this, it is better to hope that Batman has never appeared in Gotham. Batman, from a distance, he is just a big human-shaped bat, only appearing in the middle of the night, appearing beside the criminals, bringing fear. Before tonight, many people even thought that he did not exist, but was just fiction. The battle horn has sounded, and the criminals wrapped in woolen plush prison uniforms can't wait to wave their fists at Batman. It just confirms what the prison guard said to Lee Zhu before. Who can come to Blackgate prison calmly? Batman quickly waved his cape to cover the head of one of the thugs and knocked him down with a series of fast punches. 4 or 5 people surrounded him, and it took less than 30 seconds from shouting and protesting to falling under the fists. Soon, Lee Zhu was the only one left standing among the men of Black Mask. Batman's eyes naturally moved to him. Batman couldn't pretend not to see the conversation between the two of them just now. If you chase him now, you will definitely catch the guy wearing the tasteless mask. Lee Zhu raised his hands and pointed at the stairs where the cold wind kept pouring in. He had no intention of stopping Batman from the beginning. He had no grudges against the Batman of this world, at least it seemed so now. Why did Black Mask riot? What does he want? Batman did not take out a pistol from his arms and point it at Lee Zhu's head, but raised his fist to threaten. As long as Lee Zhu could not give a satisfactory answer, he would definitely wave his fist. This was the message revealed in his eyes, very firm. I was just forced to join the gang just now, but Joseph must know that if you can find him, and he hasn't been dismembered by others. Lee Zhu seemed to be thinking hard. He did this just to show his cooperation, so as not to provoke Batman's heavy punch. Even if the pistol was replaced with a fist, no one would want to be beaten for no reason. I'm afraid he doesn't know either. From what Batman said, he seemed to have talked to Warden Joseph. When leaving, Batman's right hand was still pressing his ear, and he was talking to someone with an invisible headset. I need detailed information about Blackgate Prison. Lee Zhu hugged his shoulders, watched Batman chase upstairs in the cold wind, and then he chose to go back. It was a cold day, so rushing out directly was not a good choice. Blackgate Prison had been occupied by a riot. The criminals in yellow prison uniforms locked the prison guards in the cell, and they roared wildly. They grabbed guns and fired randomly. Or they fought fist-to-flesh fights. Even though Lee Zhu had turned 4 people into toys on the way back, chopped 2 unlucky guys into pieces with a meat saw, and even injured some people with the pistol he was least familiar with, the ferocity of this group of people did not disappear. Others rushed towards Lee Zhu, cursing loudly. The out-of-control Blackgate Prison has become the most dangerous place in this city, or even in this country. This is a carnival. Even if they cannot leave Blackgate Prison, they can still have fun in it. The toy iron bars still stand in the prison. In the cell diagonally opposite, the muscular bald bastard fell in a pool of blood, lifeless. Lee Zhu came to the room where the one-eyed man was. Take me away from here, he said concisely. How much can you offer? The one-eyed middle-aged man rarely turned his head to look at Lee Zhu, as if only the bounty could arouse his interest. I don't have a penny on me. Lee Zhu patted both sides of his thighs, indicating that his pockets were empty. Wait. Seeing that the one-eyed middle-aged man was about to lie on the bed and pretend to sleep again, Lee Zhu added, does this guy Black Mask have money? Let's rob him. All the money we rob will be given to you. Chapter 39 HMM. Death Knell. The door lock quickly turned into plastic and was smashed into pieces by the fist at the first time. The toyization ability was becoming more and more handy, allowing him to use less mental and physical energy to maximize the benefits in the end. I didn't promise you. The one-eyed middle-aged man looked at the door lock that was smashed after being toyized, and his eyes stayed on Lizu's hands for a moment, and said, "Black Mask is not an easy guy to deal with. The door of that guy's bank vault is not so easy to break, and I never accept bad checks." "Really?" Lizu scratched his cheek, as if the other party's rejection exceeded his expectations. "I helped you break the cell door, and with my ability, there is no door." Lizu turned around and pointed at the toy-like door lock. All the vault doors were ineffective under this ability. Lizu still succeeded. He used the bat check and took off the small thing on the other party's ankle to get the help of the one-eyed middle-aged man. They were able to escape from the Black Gate prison, which was already wrapped in blood and slaughter. The bastard who was roaring with pride the previous second might be shot to death by the prison guard's bullet the next second, or he might be knocked to the ground by his companions. They are not crazy, but outright thugs. The most brutal thugs in the whole Gotham. This place is like hell. I want 5 million less than 20 feet. After walking out of the prison door, the one-eyed middle-aged man told Lizu his request. This might be the price he got, after weighing for a long time. Yeah. 5 million. Lizu nodded seriously, of course. If it were the patients in Arkham, they would definitely not believe that he was thinking seriously when they saw him nodding seriously. The one-eyed middle-aged man who didn't know the facts believed his serious face. Is this the way out? Lizu turned his head left and right, watching the buildings on both sides as they jogged, from the iron-barred prison cells to the activity room, and then to the guard office. They were walking towards the more central location of Black Gate Prison. There were fewer and fewer thugs in prison uniforms here, but more and more fully armed prison guards. As soon as he turned to the right, a team of fully armed prison guards had already set up their rifles and lined up to block the road. "I don't want to be shot to pieces." Lizu immediately retreated and hid behind the corner. But he saw the one-eyed middle-aged man running a few steps and stepping on the wall for leverage. His running speed was faster than the speed at which the prison guards turned their guns. Bullets poured down, but it was too late. The man fell from the sky and hit a prison guard's shoulder with his elbow. As soon as he knocked the other man to the ground, he raised his toes and kicked the rifle. He pressed his left arm down to hold the gun and rotated his body on the spot. Bang, 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 bang. After the 360-degree scattered bullets, only the man was standing. Lizu poked his head out from behind the wall and raised his thumb high. "It's great. Can you teach me how to shoot when you have time?" This question naturally received no response. Lizu bent down to pick up a rifle. In the distance, another team of fully armed prison guards happened to rush over following the sound. The muzzle of the gun was aimed at the prison guard. "Shoot." Bang, bang, bang. The muzzle of the gun jumped up without Lizu's control, and the bullets spread from the floor to the ceiling. The prison guard who just came from the corner was startled by the bullets that shot up at his face. "Put down the gun," they shouted. However, the one-eyed middle-aged man fumbled for the key on the prison guard's body and raised the rifle with one hand without looking up. The muzzle did not tilt. A rain of bullets tilted, and the team of prison guards all fell to the ground. "Wow!" Lizu exclaimed. He bent down, turned the gun into a toy as big as a key pendant, and put it in his pocket. "Let's go." With the gun, the one-eyed middle-aged man opened fire at full power and had a smooth journey. Lizu followed behind him on tiptoe, occasionally turning the gun into a toy and putting it in his pocket. Click, clang, clang. The rust on the iron door shook off. The heavy wheels turned, and the big iron door was pulled open. A dark warehouse. The dim light turned on, and the spotted spider on the spider web in the corner shook and quickly hid in the crack of the wall. Storage room. Lizu pulled a swivel chair over, kicked with his right foot, and the swivel chair moved back and hit the desk, and his body suddenly leaned forward. Haha, he laughed meaninglessly and picked up the notebook on the desk again. "I want to take back my things." The one-eyed middle-aged man grabbed the swivel chair where Lizu was sitting, pushed him away with a sudden force, and started the computer on the desk. The cheerful computer startup sound finally brought some changes to this dull space. The one-eyed middle-aged man bent over the computer. He typed on the keyboard, frowning. "The computer login requires a password." Gotham 11. Lizu raised his hand and shouted in the distance. "What?" The password, it's written here. I guess the administrator must not like this city. Lizu flipped through the notebook. I'm too lazy to write the full name of the city. No one will like it here, the one-eyed middle-aged man answered with his head down. Enter the password and check the information. He quickly found what he wanted and turned around and walked into the warehouse. With a burst of gunfire, he walked out. He was holding a cardboard box in his arms with a long stick and a long knife under his armpits. He opened the cardboard box and took out a set of special combat suits. Rather than defending against swords and knives, Lizu believed that this combat suit must be very warm to wear. Under the combat suit was a hood with yellow on the left and black on the right. There was only one eye on the entire hood. It just covered the man's disabled right eye that he could not use. With 2 pistols mounted on his waist, equipped with a tactical stick and a long knife, the one-eyed middle-aged criminal just now instantly turned into a one-eyed masked supervillain. World exploration degree. 59% as the numbers jumped with difficulty. Lizu smiled. It was another result he had not guessed. Death knell? He asked. You don't know me. Death Bell adjusted his hood. From what Lizu said, it seemed that he had just recognized him. You don't know me, but you still think I can take you away. No. Lizu shook his hand. He dropped his notebook, turned around and stepped on the wall. The small wheels of the swivel chair made a rolling sound, carrying him back to the desk. The back of the chair hit the desk with a thud. Death Bell's eyes also shifted to Lizu. From the beginning, I didn't think you could take me away, but now I think you can definitely do it. Lizu was still scratching his cheek in distress. What should I do now? I regret letting you out, really? Death Bell seemed to have made a judgment about Lizu in his heart, so it was not surprising that he said nonsense. It's time to get my money. Death Bell sorted out the pistol bullets. Finally, he picked up the rifle. Can I find a piece of clothing to wear? It's cold outside, Lizu asked with his neck shrunk. Death Bell, who had obtained the equipment, was followed by Lizu wrapped in a prison guard uniform. He was also interested in taking a Santa Claus red hat and putting it on his head. Blackgate Prison is on a special island. The only way to leave here is by helicopter. They have to go back to the roof. I wonder if Batman has left. Thank you Sir Endm for the 100 Kidian coins reward. Chapter 40 Nightmare and Reality. Blackgate Prison, rooftop. As soon as he stepped out with his left foot, the cold wind hugged Lizu's ankles tightly, and the coldness pierced into his paws like a bee sting. He shivered, hugging his arms and trembling. It was Christmas Eve, and the sky was still snowing. When Lizu looked up at the snowflakes, he noticed a helicopter flying away, and he could still see Black Mask on it. When Black Mask left, his eyes fell on Lizu for a few seconds. Lizu's appearance here itself was irrational. In this superpowered world, without super strength, super magic, or super intelligence, it is absolutely impossible to participate. Now it seems that Lizu joined as an ordinary person, as if he had obtained a strange pass, proving that he is not ordinary. Wait for me. Lizu even friendly raised his middle finger and said goodbye to Black Mask on the plane. Whoosh, the sound of rapid wind. In the corner of his eye, a black figure came crashing down, aiming at Lizu and Deathstroke. 2 seconds before being hit, Deathstroke took a step to the left and dodged easily, hugging his shoulders and watching the subsequent developments. Deathstroke dodged, leaving Lizu alone to face the black figure that was hitting his face. If he was hit with Lizu's small body, he would definitely break his bones. No one thought he could dodge. Deathstroke thought so, and the guy who threw the black figure from a distance also thought so, and even the black figure thought he couldn't dodge. But a surprising scene still happened. Lizu stood on tiptoe and jumped lightly. His body was like a piece of white paper floating up along the airflow, easily flying high into the sky. He hugged his knees, did a backflip, and turned twice in the air, and ended with his toes touching the ground. The moment he landed, his body was a little twisted and staggered, making the perfect dodge look a little more embarrassed. Boom! Exclamation mark. The black figure fell to the ground. The severe pain made him twist and squirm all over, and the bat hood on his head also proved his identity. Batman raised his head and his eyes fell on Lizu. A guy who looks so weak actually has super flexibility? From his actions just now, he looks like a circus acrobat, with first-class jumping ability and balance ability. Even the eye of Deathstroke that was exposed outside shrank uncontrollably. I don't really like this way of greeting. When we meet again. Lizu slowly raised his head and looked at the culprit who had just thrown Batman. Killer Croc. The weapon left by Black Mask to deal with Batman is Killer Croc. Monkey, get out of here. Although Killer Croc was also shocked by Lizu's strong physical flexibility, he didn't think that Lizu had the ability to hurt him. Lizu walked slowly towards Killer Croc, not caring about Killer Croc's threat. He even laughed a little. And he deliberately recalled Superman, and recalled the fear brought to him by the lasso of truth. A strange mental wave, with Lizu's body as the center, was emitted in a scattered manner. Killer Croc, who was closest to Lizu, was in a trance. He was the first lucky guy to be affected. Fear surged in his heart instantly. This figure, his steps, and the weird smile on his face, reminded Killer Croc of his past nightmare. In the nightmare, he was turned into a toy by a scary guy who looked exactly like Lizu, and even his soul was sealed in the toy. In the dream, he lived in the sewer, and could only hide and eat people. This figure was the unlucky guy who accidentally fell into his dinner bowl. But in the dream, it was him who fell into his toy box. Lizu had already walked in front of Killer Croc. In Killer Croc's vigilant eyes, he said something that made Killer Croc tremble. Do you still want to be a toy? What? How could you? Is that world real? Killer Croc stared at Lizu in fear. He subconsciously took 2 steps back and distanced himself from Lizu. Huh. The sinister expression on Lizu's face disappeared, and he scratched his cheek strangely. That world? Did you travel through it too? No matter what you are, I will never let you turn me into a toy again. Killer Croc raised his head and roared. He was ready to take the initiative and kill Lizu directly. As long as this weirdo who can turn people into toys dies, he will be fearless. Bang! Exclamation mark. The giant claw fell and missed. I'm here, Killer Croc, a voice came from behind. There was another hand, gently poking Killer Croc's back. The cold-blooded Killer Croc shuddered. He turned around suddenly and slapped back. But, it still missed. Batman, who collapsed on the ground, watched Lizu deal with Killer Croc. The powerful acrobatic skills displayed by Lizu made him subconsciously ignore the pain caused by the broken ribs. But as time went on, Lizu looked exhausted, and his breathing became louder and louder. An acrobatic master is actually sub-healthy? There is no more interesting joke than this. Death Bell, if you don't do anything, I will. I will. Lizu panted heavily and waved to Death Bell for help. Die, die, die. The huge shadow has covered Lizu's entire body. The black figure flashed by. Batman grabbed Lizu's collar and dragged him out of Killer Croc's attack range. Wait here, I think people who belong to Blackgate Prison should not leave here. Batman's low voice drilled into Lizu's ears. After speaking, he unfolded his cloak and flew high into the sky again like a huge humanoid bat. With his bat wings spread out, Batman rode the cold wind and flew around overhead with the help of a rope. He also found Killer Croc's blind spot and swooped down to attack instantly. The battle between Batman and Killer Croc was very fast. This sturdy guy, except for his mouse-grade offensive scales and infinite strength, was very lacking in fighting skills. After using 2 small props, Batman easily gained the upper hand and knocked him to the ground. Now, it's your turn to answer the question. Batman paused suddenly, and he slowly turned his head, only to find that Lizu had disappeared. The helicopter landed at the dock. Before the police arrived, Lizu and Deathstroke escaped to avoid getting into more trouble. In order to leave, they robbed a military helicopter. Lizu still regretted that he was not capable enough and could not perfectly take the helicopter into his pocket. Aren't we partners? Lizu walked side by side with Deathstroke, and he asked, why didn't you save me just now? I was almost turned into meat paste by that bastard Killer Croc. If this is all you have, there is no reason to save you, Deathstroke said with his one eye looking ahead, staring intently. Yeah, Lizu changed the anger on his face and nodded in agreement. Perhaps his questioning just now was also fake. At least, Deathstroke had a strong feeling that he thought so. Chapter 41. I'm working alone now. Christmas Eve, 11:30 in the morning. Gotham. There are still 6 hours and 30 minutes before the time-space gate opens. The streets are empty. Except for the occasional car passing by, there are only drunken streetwalkers and hooligans wearing Santa hats on the roadside. The decorated Christmas tree is as high as 2 stories and is hung with colorful bows and sequins. Unfortunately, no one dares to go out at this time, let alone make a wish under the Christmas tree. Above, the moon as big as a tire seems to be falling directly. Lizu looked up and watched a special plane passing by under the moon. It was in the shape of a bat. The air was filled with a quiet atmosphere, and you could smell the blood when you took a deep breath. The humanoid object squirming in the corner in the distance made Lizu turn his head and shout, "Why don't you let him go? Today is Christmas Eve. He may be anxious to go home for the reunion dinner." This bloody episode was all because 2 minutes ago, a drunk man got into trouble with 2 terrible people. Deathstroke grabbed the long knife with his backhand, shook off the blood on the blade, put it back into the sheath, and walked to Lizu. That was really just an episode, and no one cared about the follow-up of the object. Deathstroke also raised his head, and his one-eyed gaze was fixed on the large billboard in front of him. The door of Gotham Merchants Bank was closed. It can be seen that the owner here can also think that someone will be very tight on money during Christmas. In order to avoid his own trouble, he left work early and even shut down the 24-hour ATM. "Is it here?" Lizu pinched his chin and asked in surprise, "Is Gotham Merchants Bank an industry of black mask?" Roman Sionis, he owns his own factory, bank. It is estimated that as a mercenary, Deathstroke also encountered this situation for the first time, helping his employer to rob a bank to pay for his employment. The strange thing is that when Deathstroke heard the proposal, he did not refuse in his heart. An influence driven by subtle influence, of course. Now Deathstroke is a little strange. Not taking a blank check is his principle of doing things. Just a door. In the Flashpoint world, Lizu had no chance to see those legendary talents. They were another good guy face, or they were all killed by Batman Thomas Wayne. But he had heard a little about the talents in Gotham. A building could not stop the weirdos in Gotham, let alone a door. This door has an alarm device. As long as you force this door open, not only will the alarm sound, but all the defense measures of the vault behind will also be opened, said the Deathstroke. "Man, you really look like a narrator." Lizu laughed twice, as if he could cater to the atmosphere brought by the Christmas tree. He walked straight to the security door and reached out to press on the high-grade alloy security door. 10 seconds later, the door of China Merchants Bank turned into a plastic toy door with a carefully made Christmas theme color. Lizu pushed the door open easily, took off his red Santa hat, and grinned. "Come in." Gotham Merchants Bank. All surveillance was out of control. Only the emergency escape route sign in the corridor flashed green light, barely illuminating the road ahead. Buzz behind the vault. The sound of a car engine came from the corner. Lizu held a toy water gun in his hand and leaned against the wall to stick his head out. Behind the vault were thugs wearing black masks who were carrying bags of money into the car. Roman Sionis, who had left Blackgate Prison before, stood among them. He looked down at the watch on his left hand, holding a pistol in his right hand, and the muzzle of the gun rotated aimlessly. Anyone who was suddenly pointed at by the gun would shudder. Looking at the 2 bodies in the corner, you can know what the consequences will be if you are pointed at by a gun. Black Mask robbed his own bank? This is a more interesting discovery. "It seems that we are late." Lizu retracted, shrugged at the bell, and asked, "Do you have an action plan?" The bell looked at Lizu quietly, waiting for Lizu to continue. After a short time of contact, the bell thought he knew Lizu completely, a freak who was a little neurotic and liked to show off. It would be better for him to do nothing. After all, the purpose of his trip was money. Sure enough, Lizu scratched his neck with his right little finger and said, "I have a plan to get the money, but I have a request, that his mask must be taken off and given to me." "Of course, all the money is yours." "What?" The bell immediately denied his confidence just now. He found that he still didn't know Lizu at all. "I just think that the face under his mask may be the 1% I need most." Lizu raised the corner of his mouth, and the expression on his face showed that he was determined to get the mask. The bell found that he had no reason to refuse. The Black Mask thugs were moving the money. It was a hard job to empty the entire vault. A hard job that made people sweat profusely, but willingly. "Are you guys working overtime on Christmas Eve?" A voice came from the corner, and a man wearing a red Santa hat was waving. He was holding a toy water gun in his left hand. Oh. Black Mask Roman Sinus stared at Lizu with interest through his mask. Did you get rid of Batman? Black Mask almost forgot the fun he encountered in Blackgate prison. We welcome you back, but I'm offering a bounty of 2 million for Batman's head. Black Mask's voice was still bad. Lizu walked forward slowly and aimed his toy water gun at the two thugs closest to him. I'm working alone now. In an instant, the toy gun turned into a real gun, and flames spurted out of the muzzle. The recoil pushed Lizu's body to tremble constantly. The bullets circled from the floor to the top of his head. Unfortunately, not a single shot hit. The toy gun suddenly turned into a real gun, catching everyone off guard, and only Black Mask laughed ha 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 in surprise. At the moment, when Lizu's bullets were empty, the Black Mask thug seized the opportunity and pounced on him. Bang, bang. 2 gunshots were heard in the dark, and the 2 thugs closest to Lizu fell to the ground. Oh. Black Mask raised his head curiously, and the muzzle of the gun suddenly turned. Bang. Puff, the bullet hit the flesh, and a Black Mask thug fell to the ground. Black Mask was not panicked at all, just shaking his head tsk. He quickly fired 3 more shots in 3 directions, and all 3 shots hit his men. I don't know if he really knows the location of the killer in the dark, or if he fired 2 shots for fun. The hunting in the dark is not over yet. The Black Mask thugs turned around like frightened birds to look for the killer in the dark, but fell one by one, not only under the dark death knell gun, but also in the hands of the Black Mask. When most of the Black Mask thugs were killed or injured, the death knell fell beside Lizu, holding a long stick. The stick was stained with blood. Wait a minute. Lizu stopped the death knell when he was about to pounce. I think we may have found the wrong person. Lizu glanced at the Black Mask and then looked at the woman in the corner. In the previous second, the bullet of the death knell killed the thug who covered the woman's mouth and also allowed the woman to regain her freedom, allowing her to reveal that smile. It was a mechanical, heartfelt, terrifying, crazy, morbid, a chaotic laugh. Ha 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 ha. She staggered to her feet and pointed at Lizu and laughed. She laughed out loud. On the road paved with corpses, blood, and broken arms and limbs, she laughed wantonly. Thank you Commoner NDM for the 100 starting coins reward. Thank you Jokerizing for the 100 starting coins reward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Detective Batman. The full moon was in the sky. Christmas snowflakes fell, melted in the blood, and froze into beautiful blood crystals. The bat cape fluttered in the wind, and the eyes covered by the black hood looked at the behemoth in the pool of blood. Huluhu blood flowed out from the corner of Killer Croc's mouth with the sound of snoring. The powerful and terrifying Killer Croc had been beaten by Batman and spit out blood. He fell to the ground exhausted, and could not struggle. Batman stepped on Killer Croc's chest with the blood-stained black sole of his boot, squeezing Killer Croc's chest, and forcing him to spit out more blood. Tell me where the Black Mask is. Otherwise I will break all your teeth. The raised fist proved that he was not joking. Killer Croc smiled, and the mouse grayscales at the corner of his mouth exploded. Blood jumped out of the wound, and ripped into the pool of blood, quickly turning into a blood crystal. He refused to answer. You will definitely expect me to kill you, I promise. Batman did not pause at all, and punched Killer Croc in the side of his face. The special metal of the forearm now became the strongest and sharpest blade, piercing through the side of Killer Croc's face, and crushing most of his sharp teeth. After leaving Killer Croc's face, Batman did not ask questions immediately, but continued to swing his fist. The second punch, the third punch, the fourth punch, until Killer Croc's teeth were knocked out, and his mouth was really full of blood. Now, tell me the location of Black Mask. Batman grabbed Killer Croc's head, and intimidation by force was his most formal interrogation method. Under this interrogation, Killer Croc's eyes were dazed, and he was about to faint. Killer Croc did not say anything, but another voice came from Batman's headset. I have found the specific information of Black Mask and his residence. Alfred? Batman was about to ask, but suddenly saw a group of fully armed police rushing up. He raised his arm, pressed a few numbers on the control panel of his left arm, and a huge bat plane flew over and floated above his head. Batman jumped lightly onto the bat plane and left Blackgate Prison amid the hail of bullets from the police. You may not have guessed his specific identity, Roman Sionis. He has also issued a reward for you and wants to take your head in exchange for 2 million. Alfu's voice on the phone was not only calm, but also a bit teasing. Reward. We'll talk about this later. After learning the general information, Batman changed his flight route and headed for the residence of Roman Sionis. The Batplane crossed the moon sky and flew under the huge full moon. Roman Sionis' house. The door was open. This is. Batman walked into the room without any hindrance. He just glanced at it roughly, and several obvious traces of battle at the scene immediately attracted Batman's attention. He squatted down first and touched the 2 oil marks on the wooden floor. It's shoe polish. Batman lowered his head and gently touched the traces with his fingers. Someone was knocked unconscious and dragged. There may be a body here. A big fire. Batman stood up and walked to the carpet that was burned to ashes and squatted down, but there are no signs of struggle, and it is very likely that no one was burned. His eyes turned to the last place, which was the overturned table. It was a mess. Someone had a fight here. Maybe one person won, or maybe both were injured. This scene was completely different from what Batman had imagined, and there were many doubts. Black Mask would never let his home be disturbed, let alone fight here. Alfred, help me investigate the relevant information. He could only ask his old butler for help. I have prepared a copy of the information for you in advance. Sir. Alfred's voice was still calm. Transfer it to your portable device now. Batman took out the smart computer he carried with him. The news from Alfred added many more clues, which accelerated Batman's speculation. There is a body at the door, lying there, and it seems that the person being dragged is not him. There is a body here. It is Roman Sionis' girlfriend. She is tied to the chandelier, like Jesus nailed to the cross, and there are bullet wounds on the body. Judging from the direction, the shooter is a dwarf about 3 feet tall, who killed Roman Sionis' wife, and then, no. Batman pondered, the bullets of this gun, from the police records, can be seen that it is Roman Sionis' gun. Did he kill his girlfriend? From the current clues, there are 4 people, a mysterious man, a Roman Sionis' girlfriend, and a person being dragged. If the person who was knocked down after pushing the door was Roman Sionis, the one being dragged was another strange participant. The more clues he saw, the more confused Batman felt. He always felt that he had missed one. Even with his powerful reasoning ability, it was difficult to restore the battle situation in this chaotic scene. Unless the Penguin is also related to this, there is no way to explain the dwarf. Batman walked around the room, his brain trying to restore the scene. He demonstrated the situation in his mind again and again, and tried to find relevant information to help him reason. This is. Finally, a woolen cloth hanging on the glass door of the balcony attracted his attention. This was a piece of cloth torn from the suit. Where is the communication record, Alfred? This is a message. The data was quietly transferred to Batman's portable computer. This is a message from Roman Sionis' girlfriend to Roman. Joker said he wants to settle accounts with you. He is coming. Even if he couldn't see the situation at the time, Batman could only think of the panic on Roman's girlfriend's face at the time. Joker? This is a name Batman has never heard of. Who would scare Black Mask like this? The appearance of this message also allowed Batman's reasoning to proceed smoothly. In Batman's eyes, everything began to be restored. The incident returned to that day. A mysterious man named Joker has a grudge against Roman Sionis, and is very scary. He even scared Roman Sionis to put his girlfriend in this safe house. This house has everything except safety. The mysterious man invaded the home of Roman Sionis, who was wearing a black mask, and captured his girlfriend, hanging her above his head in a very evil way. He sat on the table, waiting for Roman Sionis to arrive. Roman Sionis also noticed the abnormality here, so he sent one of his men to wear a black mask and pretend to be himself and push the door open from the front door, but was unfortunately shot and killed by the mysterious guy. Just when the mysterious man was attracted by the fake Roman Sinus, the real Roman Sinus had lurked on the balcony and took the opportunity to rush in and knock down the mysterious man. The two wrestled with each other, and the ending seemed to be that the mysterious man won. Roman Sinus was dragged away, and the two shoe polish marks on the ground belonged to him. This happened 2 weeks ago, so the black mask during this period was pretended by the mysterious man in the dark. There are only 2 questions now. First, how did that guy make Roman Sinus shoot and kill his girlfriend? Second, what does that fire have to do with all this? If this mysterious man wants money, he will definitely let Roman Sinus continue to live. Gotham Merchants Bank. He has deduced the most likely location and set off immediately. Gotham Merchants Bank. Lizu looked at the black mask in front of him and said, I think we may have found the wrong person. Ha ha ha. The black mask raised his head and laughed wildly. He took off his helmet. A conspicuous green hair and a weird and hideous smile. It was Lizu's old boss, the Joker. Thank you for the 100 starting coins reward. Thank you for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 43 2 Madman. Christmas, Gotham, 002. 5 hours and 28 minutes until the time-space gate opens. Gotham Merchants Bank, Vault. Lizu, wearing a Santa hat, tilted his head. Deathstroke stood beside him, saying nothing. The muzzle of the gun in his hand was still smoking, shaking slightly with his breathing. Across from him, the female salesperson with a weird smile on her face was still laughing loudly, her terrified eyes and the terrifying smile on her face intertwined into the most terrifying picture. Ha 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 ha. The Joker held the gun in his right hand and hugged the female salesperson's shoulders. The corner of his mouth was cut into a big smile by the blade, splitting his cheekbone. Do you know me? The Joker leaned forward and looked at Lizu. Lizu's eyes just now, and his as expected smile when he took off the black mask, all showed that Lizu knew him. Well, how should I put it? Lizu dropped the rifle that was empty of ammunition in his hand, took out the meat saw toy from his pocket, and swung it twice in the air, making a rustling sound. Even the bell standing next to Lizu looked at Lizu strangely. Through this period of contact, he thought that Lizu should have no fear and nothing to be afraid of. His brain was like a turbulent pond, and he could not see any swimming fish, water plants, shrimps, or crabs. But this green-haired clown, he was dressed like a scary clown in a circus. It was such a weird guy that made Lizu look cautious. These two people are really unexpected. The bell took 2 steps back and left the battle circle. He looked at the clown and then at Lizu. 2 people, one with green hair, ugly and scary, and the other with black hair, pale and decadent skin. 2 completely different people, but the bell had a feeling. Really like. How should I put it? Lizu raised the meat saw toy and pointed at the clown. If you don't like to wear skirts, then we are not very familiar with each other. His heart was pounding and beating wildly. He could feel that his fear of the clown was the fear of a rational soul towards a chaotic and crazy monster. At the same time, he could also feel excitement, which was the excitement of the beast dormant in his body, which was also chaotic and crazy. After seeing another beast, the beast roared through Lizu's mouth. Ha 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 ha. It was a big laugh. Gaga ha 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 ha. Deathstroke stood aside with his arms around his shoulders, watching the 2 lunatics laughing, like a sacrifice to an old god. 2 humanoid priests praying, chanting, and dancing, using weird and deformed movements to try to get chaos to come. The clown smiled and pushed the female salesperson away. She was as inconspicuous as a small stone in this weird laughter. The female salesperson fell to the ground, curled up on the ground and laughed, adding some boring background to this pair of weird laughter. Lizu and the clown walked towards each other, one holding a plastic meat saw, and the other holding a pistol. At this time, they only had eyes for each other. The 2 laughing people seemed to be ready for a hug, like 2 old friends who had not seen each other for many years. They stood face to face. Bang! The clown suddenly raised his right hand and fired unexpectedly. The smoking muzzle was tilted, and the bullet grazed the side of Lizu's face, leaving a tiny wound on his cheek. Ha 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 ha. The clown was still laughing with his belly. He slowly moved the muzzle of the gun and put it against Lizu's brow. The plastic meat saw in Lizu's hand was also pressed against the clown's neck. The plastic meat saw gradually changed into steel saw teeth and pierced into the clown's neck. It was like a vicious tiger biting through the clown's skin, and blood gushed out of the wound. The two of them did not give in at all, turning a blind eye to the weapons that could take their lives at any time, but instead focusing on each other's eyes, trying to capture the fear. The clown put away the gun. "You are such a mad dog." He lost interest in Lizu. He preferred to push people into the darkness and watch them struggle, but he hated the weirdos who belonged to the darkness. The pursuit of understanding the truth of the world is a crazy thing. Lizu also smiled and raised his weapon. He admitted that he was crazy sometimes, but unlike the clown's aimless chaos and madness, he had a goal, not a mad dog without a purpose. Deathstroke watched the two men with one eye the whole time, watching them suddenly fight, and then suddenly shake hands and make peace. Bang! Exclamation mark. There was a sudden explosion above his head, and the stone and bricks fell from the top of his head, interrupting the atmosphere that made Deathstroke feel uncomfortable. A black figure also fell from the sky and half knelt in the field. The thick black cloak spread out and fell to the ground. Batman appeared. Batman stood up from the ground and gently shook off the gravel on his cloak. The situation here was completely different from what he expected. There were corpses all over the ground, scattered all over the ground. The car that had emptied the vault was about to leave with the engine roaring. The female salesperson on the ground laughing strangely. The masked man standing next to him. He recognized the other party's information at a glance. Deathstroke, a mercenary. In an instant, Batman made a guess from his heart, based on the situation on the scene. The people pretending to be Roman Sinus wanted to empty the Gotham Merchants Bank, but another group of people, that is, Deathstroke and his group, also came here, and the two sides had a gunfight and a battle, and the result of the battle was the corpses and blood on the ground. Not far from Batman, a weirdo with green hair and a smile cut by a sharp blade on the corner of his mouth was holding a pistol and looking at him curiously, his eyes full of interest. They had met on the roof of Blackgate Prison. A guy wearing a Santa hat was also standing there with a meat saw, looking at him with an expectant look, as if he was ready to watch a good show. Two weirdos with the same smile. Where is Roman Sinus? He looked around and finally fixed his eyes on the weirdo with green hair. Intuition and clues at the scene all indicated that this weirdo with green hair must be related to the disappearance of Roman Sinus. Batman, 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 Batman. The Joker raised his head and laughed strangely. He suddenly turned the muzzle of the gun and pointed it at the female salesperson, who was curled up on the ground and laughing. Ha 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 ha. The female salesperson was still laughing, with no intention of dodging. Batman immediately pounced on the female salesperson and rolled away on the ground with her arms around her. But the gunshot was not heard for a long time. When Batman helped the saleswoman to get up from the ground, he turned around and saw that the Joker was just aiming his gun at him but didn't shoot. Ga 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 ha 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 ha. The Joker fired, laughing and catching Batman off guard. All three shots hit positions that were not fatal but painful enough. Batman fell to the ground and his body twitched. A few minutes later, when Batman got up from the ground, holding his chest, the Joker, Santa hat, and Deathstroke had already left in the armored car. Beep beep, the countdown explosives were thrown in front of Batman. Thank you blind and foolish celestial sound for the 1000 starting coins reward. Chapter 44. Newcomer, Toyman. Batman injured the pain, bent down and helped the female salesperson who was still laughing on the ground. The female salesperson seemed to be unable to do anything else except laughing, and had no sense of crisis. The staggering Batman was the reason for her laughter. The corpses on the ground were the reason for her laughter, and even the rapid beep, beep of the bomb was a reason for her laughter. The two staggered into the corner and narrowly avoided the explosion. Boom! Exclamation mark. They were knocked to the ground by the heat wave behind them. Ha 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 ha. The woman was still laughing, and her laughter was mixed with coughing. The tears, saliva, and the upturned corners of the mouth and the neat two rows of teeth from the coughing formed a painting called Weird. Batman looked at this face quietly with a serious look. It's some kind of neurotoxin. He realized the problem just as he stretched out his hand to touch the female salesperson. Ha 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 ha. Hiccup. The laughter stopped abruptly. Dead. The dead female salesperson's face was still piled with smiles. The absent-minded pupils looked at Batman. Joker. The money transport truck rushed out of Gotham Merchant's Bank. The Joker turned the steering wheel frantically, laughing strangely. He knocked over two Christmas trees on the roadside and left with 2 fire hydrants, sending him off with a water curtain. Why not kill him? Lizu sat in the co-pilot, holding the meat saw that made the Joker's shoulder still bleed. What's more interesting than making a guy who calls himself a hero face reality? The Joker's voice was full of pride. He will eventually understand that there is no one in this world who doesn't deserve to die, and no one who won't kill her. Ha ha ha. Batman's bottom line is not to kill people, but what the Joker expects is for Batman to break his own rules, even if the person Batman kills when breaking the rules may be the Joker himself. He is just a madman. As long as he can pull things into the darkness and make him feel interesting, that's enough. The Joker thinks Lizu will understand his thoughts. They are the same kind of people. Will there be 2 clowns in this world? Of course, everyone may become a clown after knowing too much truth or being crazy enough. The Joker had this idea because Lizu had ignored the gun pointed at him before, and his eyes showed that he didn't care about life and death. It was precisely because of this madness that the Joker thought he was a mad dog, the same mad dog as himself. You really have a bad taste. Lizu put away the meat saw and shrugged. His real confidence was completely different from the Joker's idea. He was very afraid of death, but another thing gave him confidence. World exploration degree 60% resurrection times +1. Gotham, Christmas, 0:55. The bell hanging at the door of the department store began to shake. The jingling bell sounded, trying to attract the reindeer sleigh. Buzz, the sound of the car engine approaching, was not the sleigh pulled by reindeer. The car stopped with a tailspin and broke the door of the department store. The driver's door was pushed open, and the Joker with a black mask jumped out of the car. The voice also changed from weird and crazy to a lot of serious, just like the impression of the black mask in people's minds. He said to Lizu in the co-pilot seat, "Do you want to meet other friends? Our new quarterly summary meeting is about to begin." Lizu pushed open the co-pilot door. The one-eyed mercenary left after getting his own reward, and the Joker did not stop him at all. The Joker did not want to provoke Deathstroke. It was obvious that he was not interested in a car full of money, nor in Deathstroke. Moreover, his madness was completely useless to Deathstroke. Lizu patted the red Santa hat on his head. He smiled and said, "Of course. Gotham City Hall. The huge Christmas tree, like the one in the Flashpoint world, decorated with Christmas gift boxes tied with bows and star sequins. On the 15th floor, in an office controlled by the Black Mask thugs, a group of people gathered here. Well, Black Mask clapped his hands. Killers, assassins, and arsonists. Well, welcome to the first quarter of the Killing Batman technical summary meeting." He stood in front of the table, and there was a cake on the table, and the cake was cut into 4 pieces. "First, we would like to welcome a new member. Please introduce yourself." Black Mask's voice was very high-pitched, and his raised arms were shaking. The other 3 people turned their eyes to Lizu, who was wearing a Santa hat. "Merry Christmas." Lizu walked from the corner to the center of everyone's sight. "Please allow me to introduce myself." He held a toy gun in his left hand, shaking it to introduce himself, which made the other 3 people frown. "Now it's time to kill Batman, not to find a yellow monkey," the sturdy man wearing a black hood said in a muffled voice. He was very disdainful of Lizu, and even looked at the boss of Black Mask with disdain. On the other side, the sturdy man wearing electric shock gloves sitting on the chair stood up. The electrocutioner, a terrifying guy who attacks with high voltage electric gloves. The arc of electricity on his fist has a wonderful attraction that makes people's hearts stop beating. Can this guy kill Batman? With a toy gun. The electrocutioner took heavy steps and approached Lizu. He opened his 5 fingers, and the gaps between them were filled with blue arcs of electricity, and the air was scorching. His palm reached for the toy gun in Lizu's hand. Bang! The bullet hit the shoulder of the electrocutor, splashing a bright flower of blood. The toy gun had turned into a real gun. The electrocutor's movements also froze. He couldn't withstand the bullet. "I'm not here to steal your job. I just want to take a look at you interesting guys." Lizu looked at the other 2. The guy wearing a black hood, Bane. The arsonist wearing special equipment and holding a flamethrower, Firefly. Yeah, Lee Su pushed the muzzle of the gun forward fiercely, pressing it against the electrocutor's eyebrows. What do you think you can do besides discharge electricity? Kill Batman and get the bounty? Be careful. The electrocutor raised his hand slightly, signaling Lee Su to be careful, lest the gun go off accidentally. Bang! With the sound of a crisp bullet, the electrocutor's right leg tilted, and he fell to the ground. The one who fired the shot was the Black Mask standing behind him, but at this time he took off the black mask, revealing his green hair and a crazy smile. Ha 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 ha. He quickly fired several shots at the electrocutioner. When the body fell to the ground with a bang, the electrocutioner was completely out of breath. 4 pieces of cake. It's easier to share this way. The Joker took a piece of cake and took a bite. I love this taste. He held the cake, imitated the British gentleman comically, and raised his hand to invite Lee Su. Lee Su turned toys into weapons, and the Black Mask suddenly turned into a green-haired weirdo. These two things really shocked Bane and Firefly. Please allow me to introduce myself. Lee Su cleared his throat, and a smile appeared on his pale and weak face. You can call me Toyman. Chapter 45. Invasion of the Gotham Police Station. Per applause. Apparently only the Joker was clapping. The red paint and white cream on the corners of his mouth were very dazzling. The Black Mask was no longer the rich Roman, but an unheard of green-haired weirdo. Like a lunatic who escaped from a mental hospital. The Asian who called himself a toy man, although he looked much more calm, could be guessed from the crazy smile on his mouth that he was also a lunatic. The Joker stood beside the body of the electrocutor. He put the pistol back into his arms and licked the knife stained with butter with his tongue. He even deliberately cut his tongue to bleed. Ha 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 ha. The Joker laughed even crazier, and his performance made the other two feel very uncomfortable. You should know your job. Go kill Batman, or be killed by Batman. He roared like a hungry wolf in the mountains, and the healed scar on the corner of his mouth was almost torn open again. Firefly held the flamethrower, drove the flame through the window, and flew into the quiet atmosphere created by snow and Christmas. He was destined to light up this night. I have no interest in this toy boy. Bane stood up. He was as strong as a dark hill. The silhouette cast by the light on him enveloped Lee Su and the Joker. But you can't leave. Bane pointed at the Joker, ignoring the knife in his hand and the gun that the Joker might pull out at any time. Batman's target is you. You have to stay here. Be good. Be the bait. Wait for him to come. The huge palm pressed the Joker's shoulder. He easily lifted the Joker and threw him on the chair. Ha 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 ha. The Joker was not angry, but just sat on the chair and laughed. It was estimated that he remembered something fun again. Or maybe he was simply interested in Bane's fight with Batman. Who wouldn't be interested? Bane's eyes turned to Lee Su. The eyes under the hood were like sabers on the battlefield, smashing head on, full of murderous intent. You will definitely not like it. The third party. I have something else to do. Lee Su pointed to the door. He left very tactfully. In Bane's eyes that said, get rid of the troublemaker first. Bye. Ha ha ha. The Joker sat on the chair and laughed at Lee Su. He was now trapped in the chair by Bane, but Lee Su knew very well that the Joker sat on the chair obediently, just because he felt that it would be more interesting. As for the reason, madmen never need reasons for their actions. But I need a little goal. Lee Su looked at the world exploration degree, which had reached 62%, and his exploration journey had to continue. He walked out of the conference room, and there was a tight defense outside. The people walking in an interlaced manner were from the men of Black Mask and Bane. They saw Lee Su coming, and automatically split into two sides, to make way for him. Just now, Black Mask personally led the way, and brought Lee Su into the conference room. They would not pretend not to see it. This weirdo with a toy gun in one hand and a toy knife in the other hand, wearing a Santa hat, is also a member of the Killer, at least from the guess in his heart. It turns out that being a villain has this benefit: the thugs who used to be ferocious stood on both sides obediently to make way, and even a little giant pressed the elevator door and respectfully invited Lee Su in. Lee Su walked into the elevator entranced with satisfaction. At the moment when the elevator door closed, he stretched out his hand and stopped the elevator door from closing. Under the puzzled gaze of the little giant, Lee Su tilted his head and leaned out, asking, "Excuse me, how do I get to the Gotham Police Department?" Full moon, snow, time. 2:04. A figure wearing a Santa hat staggered on the sidewalk. The road was quiet. Apart from the snow, only a group of pigeons fluttered their wings and flew over their heads. The explosions everywhere startled them and left them with nowhere to land. Ding, the red light came on, and Lizu stopped at the zebra crossing and waited quietly. There were no cars passing by during the 2-minute red light time, but he obeyed the traffic rules. Boom. There was an explosion. Lizu turned his head and looked at the 20-story building only 1 block away from him, which collapsed with a loud bang. The building tilted, and the ground shook violently. The wind pressure blew along the street, hitting Lizu's back and blowing his clothes. The red Santa hat was blown away by the strong wind mixed with dust. Lizu raised his hand to grab the hat and pressed it on his head again. Joker. Before leaving the municipal building, he saw a remote control next to the Joker, each with a skull logo. When the wind stopped and the green light came on, Lizu took a step to cross the zebra crossing. Gotham Police Department. The LED light board flickered from time to time. Standing at the door, you can hear the cheers inside. They are celebrating their own Christmas. Although the Blackgate prison riot happened not long ago, Lizu pushed the door open. What a joyful atmosphere. The joyful atmosphere behind the door suddenly stopped. The guys wearing police uniforms, wearing Christmas knots, and biting red and white candy sticks froze. They turned their heads and looked at the figure standing at the door. The policeman with dark skin but white teeth came over. What's wrong? Poor yellow-skinned friend. Now they only want to deal with this guy who disturbed their Christmas as soon as possible. I'm here to report a crime. Lizu pointed behind him. Just 1 street away from the municipal building, my building was blown down by explosives. Oh, it turned out to be an explosion. I thought it was fireworks. A voice jumped out from the crowd. Then there must be another bastard causing trouble on Christmas. Can't those bastards be quiet? The policemen were talking unhappily. There was a riot in Blackgate prison, and our reinforcement just arrived. I just received news that there was an explosion, and a whole building was blown down. A voice came from the stairs, attracting everyone's attention. He wore square glasses and had a thick beard on his lips. Sheriff James Gordon. We must act now. I have reason to believe that this is a well-prepared terrorist attack. Sheriff Gordon swept his eyes over everyone. Now, the party is over. Yes. The police began to run in panic, throwing away Christmas and red hats, picking up guns, and rushing out with thick police jackets. Slow down, Lizu dodged the flood of policemen. You may have to stay here for a while longer. Sergeant Gordon came over and nodded to the police officers who stayed in the distance, then said to Lizu, this night is not peaceful at all, but at least it is safer here. As he spoke, he stared at Lizu's face carefully. A strange Asian face. Gordon was sure that he didn't know him. In Gotham City, he was not a familiar face, but at least he could be sure that the other party was not a big threat. Yes, sir. Lizu nodded and shouted when Gordon walked out of the police station door. Merry Christmas you two. Gordon held his glasses and left with a forced smile. Chapter 46. Barbara and the Toyman. The door of the police station was closed. The street lights and the falling snow were blocked by the iron mesh door. Also blocked out was the resolute back of James Gordon. Sit here. Lizu sat in front of a desk arranged by the police. On the desk was a file about notorious Gotham villains such as Calendar Man, Black Mask, Bane, etc. Even Batman was recorded. On the contrary, Lizu, the newcomer, was not well known by anyone. Lizu twisted a little awkwardly. He changed his sitting position, turning his head from left to right, and then to left again. Don't worry. A young-looking policeman came over and put a cup of hot coffee in front of Lizu. We will definitely bring the criminals to justice. Thank you. Lizu held the coffee, took a sip in front of his lips, and suppressed his straightness to prevent that bastard in his body from saying, I prefer milk tea and orange soda, not coffee. Because of the Blackgate prison riot and the bombing near the municipal building, the Gotham Police Department was unprecedentedly short of manpower. In the hall, there were only 3 policemen besides Lizu, sitting in 3 corners. Lizu was at the intersection of their sight lines. If he moved a little, he would inevitably attract the attention of the 3 people. Lizu took another sip of coffee, and his eyebrows seemed to be knotted and wrinkled. Finally, 10 minutes later, he stood up, took out the plastic meat saw from his pocket, and walked towards the policeman closest to him step by step. Gotham Municipal Building. In front of the huge French window, Batman knocked down the sturdy man in the black hood in front of him with one punch. After being hit by more than a dozen heavy punches and almost breaking his waist by being lifted up, he seized the opportunity to counter-attack and hit the opponent's chin with an uppercut, successfully killing him. Deathstroke isn't here, and neither is the other weirdo. Batman slowly walked towards the Joker. Only you are left. Ha 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 ha. The Joker interrupted Batman's words with a loud laugh. He raised the controller in his hand and gestured. This thing, just press it lightly, and it will, bang. The building will become the most gorgeous fireworks on Christmas. The Joker's hand suddenly opened, and his cracked mouth was also imitating the explosion. Batman paused. He was not sure whether the Joker's words were true or false. It was difficult to guess the thoughts of a madman. Of course, it was impossible to bury explosives under more than a dozen buildings overnight, but what if the Joker had thought of threatening Batman in this way on the first day he pretended to be Black Mask? For the sake of caution, Batman stopped. The Joker did not stop his actions. He stretched out his index finger and pressed the button hard. Like this, said the Joker. Click, a crisp button squeezing sound. Rumble. Batman could see a skyscraper collapsing from the corner of his eye through the window. A strong wind blew, and the snowstorm swept away the dust. That building also disappeared like a human being. Even if he didn't rush to the scene, Batman could imagine the horrible scene. There would be a river of blood, and the smell of blood almost became a substance that wanted to break free from Batman's fantasy and get into his nasal cavity. The pungent smell of blood made his veins pop. Ha 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 ha. Do you like this Christmas gift? The Joker leaned back in his swivel chair, holding his belly and laughing. He was not laughing at Batman's anger because he blew up a building. Instead, the angry Batman might break his bottom line and kill him with his own hands. Pulling a guy who sticks to the bottom line into the abyss of madness is the Joker's happiness. Batman was angry, but he had to stop because of the death scythe in the Joker's hand. He could only roar, "Clown." Lizu walked behind the policeman closest to him, raised the meat saw above his head, ready to chop down at any time. The other two policemen did not pay attention to him. They were busy with their own things. But Lizu did not make a move, and after a few seconds he slowly put down the plastic toy knife. What's the matter? The policeman sitting on the chair felt someone standing behind him, turned around and found that it was Lizu, and stared at the plastic toy knife in his hand curiously. I want to ask, how do I get to the bathroom? I may have drunk too much tonight, he said, clamping his legs together, as if he really couldn't wait. Turn right on the second floor, don't walk around, the policeman casually reminded, and he pointed to the stairs. Thank you. Lizu walked up to the second floor openly under the gaze of the three policemen. The second floor was empty. After turning around and not finding what he wanted, he went up to the third floor, and then to the fourth floor. Lizu stopped in front of an office door and looked up at the house number. Archives. Lizu stepped forward, ready to find something useful to him in the archives. With the countdown about to end, only the Gotham archives can meet his greatest needs. What do you want to do? Before Lizu stretched out his hand to push open the door, a voice came from the side. The girl in a casual cotton coat stretched out her hand to block the door. She stared at Lizu warily. This is the archives room. You can't enter casually. She looked at Lizu from bottom to top. He was wearing a black cotton coat, a nation face, and the most conspicuous thing on his body, a Christmas red hat. He was more like a weird version of Santa Claus. There were no reindeers, no gift packages, and he didn't walk in a chimney. But his whole body revealed a weird atmosphere. I'm looking for something. This city is suffering from destruction, and I think the solution may be in it. Lizu pointed to the archives and asked, do you know Batman? He decided to borrow a name. Batman. The girl's attitude changed. She asked excitedly, you mean Batman? Do you know him? We just met tonight. Lizu didn't expect Batman's reputation to be so useful. Click. The door was already open. A huge database. The girl pulled Lizu in and turned on the computer. What do you want? She sat in front of the computer and asked expectantly. It was as if she had assumed herself to be Batman's assistant. Gotham's Blackgate prison was attacked, and many bastards escaped from it. Lizu said, I want you to help me investigate some super criminals. The more the better, no problem. The girl clattered on the keyboard. Look at this. Lizu leaned over and looked at the pages of information. Bronze tiger, copperhead, snake, penguin. Every time he looked at a criminal, his exploration degree was also increasing. World exploration degree. 63%, 64%, 65%. It was increasing little by little. It stopped at 68%. At this time in Gotham, many talents had not appeared yet. You've been a great help, Lizu said with praise, but he had another evil taste in his heart. If the girl knew that he was a villain who was against Batman, not a superhero, how funny would her expression be? Can you tell me your name? Lizu asked. Barbara Gordon. Barbara introduced herself and asked, what about you? Toyman Lizu took out a toy gun and handed it to Barbara. Merry Christmas. Chapter 47, Blackgate Carnival Party. What is this? Barbara took the gun in surprise. It was a very cute plastic gun with a Christmas knot and a pink and blue ribbon tied on the muzzle. It was like the first birthday present of a 5-year-old child since he could remember. Christmas gift, if you like this. Lizu took out a toy meat saw. On one side was a cute toy gun, and on the other side was a hideous and bloody meat saw toy. Thank you. Barbara accepted the toy gun with an awkward smile. After giving the gift, Lizu was like a retired Santa Claus, holding a meat saw in his right hand and holding a Santa hat in his left hand, leaving only a back view. Please wait, you. Barbara wanted to ask Lizu some questions, but she trotted to the stairs and bumped into a policeman rushing up. Where is the kid with the Santa hat just now? He asked Barbara. Didn't you see him going down the stairs just now? Barbara asked curiously. No, he just came to report a crime, saying he saw a building collapse. We asked him to stay for a while. He went to the bathroom just now and then came upstairs, but we didn't find him upstairs just now. We can't let a person wander around in the police station. The police turned his head and looked around. There have been enough troubles today. I guess you can't find it. Barbara walked to the stairs and looked at the open window. The cold wind blew and cold air and snowflakes. A smile appeared on her face. Just now she was still worried about what to do if Batman's partner was caught. Now she has no such worry at all. If the other party is really Batman's partner, how could he be an ordinary person? Fortunately, the policeman didn't dwell on it. On Christmas, which is full of troubles, no one would pay attention to where a weird guy wearing a Santa hat goes. This is. The policeman looked at the toy gun in Barbara's hand. Barbara smiled. Christmas present. Santa Claus gave it to me. The best Christmas present. The policeman shrugged indifferently. He didn't understand what Barbara said, but he didn't care when he looked at the toy gun. His little nephew didn't like this kind of toy a few years ago. He is still worried about which one of the toy plane and toy tank can help him spend the next few days safely. Gotham Police Station. Outside the window at the staircase on the 3rd floor, the strong wind blew inwards along the side of Lizu's face. The heat in the police station seemed to have found an outlet and sprayed out vigorously. Standing on the edge of the window, looking up was the dark night sky, and there was a moon like an eye, and the moon became bigger. Lizu exhaled, grabbed the pipe beside him, and jumped. The pipe instantly turned into a plastic toy, pulling him down with strong toughness. When he was 2 meters away from the ground, he let go. He landed, hugged his head and rolled forward, rolling. The calf tendons were tense and exerted force. Then he took a difficult jump, did a front flip, and landed smoothly on the ground. It's so hard to be a spy. Lizu pulled his clothes and smoothed out the wrinkles. It's 3:16 now. Send someone over immediately. On the Gotham Cross-Sea Bridge, Commissioner Gordon shouted with a communicator. The bridge had already turned into a sea of fire. The arsonist wearing special flying equipment was hanging on the bridge. It was Batman. When he found out that his system was hacked by Batman, he had not yet been able to warn Batman and persuade him to surrender. He received a message from Batman to receive the supervillain Firefly. Can he really fly? Commissioner Gordon's eyes looked over the sea of fire, watching the arsonist soaring in the sky and giving everyone a headache. At this time, he really looked like a firefly, tied up and trapped there, and he couldn't help but have doubts in his heart. The police knew about the existence of Batman earlier than anyone else. but they refuse to acknowledge the existence of Batman more than anyone else. Gotham's peace doesn't need a violent criminal to maintain it. However, judging from the many serial problems tonight, Batman is much more important than the police. Harvey, what's wrong? Another voice interrupted the intercom. Blackgate Prison is now completely lost. All police officers have been captured, including Warden Joseph. We tried to get in touch with that group of people, but what? Gordon asked. In this endless trouble, Warden Joseph is still alive, which is barely good news. But they don't ask for anything. There is no exchange. They just want chaos. Chaos? Gordon frowned. He suddenly caught a glimpse of a figure wearing a red Santa hat passing by. Get out of here quickly. The police responsible for maintaining order in the distance drove the figure away. Gordon's eyes stayed on the other person for a long time. Firefly was also caught. Lizu happened to walk to the bridge and saw the Gotham police doing the aftermath from a distance. The arsonist Firefly obviously failed to escape Batman's punishment, which also indicates that everyone who goes against Batman will not have a good end, including Lizu. Lizu has no plan for the next trip, but he will definitely not return to the terrible place of Blackgate Prison. Sir, Mr. Toyman at the right turn of the alley, a muscular man with a black hood came out and said to Lizu, Bane invites you. Bane? Lizu was surprised. I don't seem to have much in common with him. He said you will definitely go there. There is a gorgeous performance and a carnival party there. The muscular man seemed very confident, and he specifically reminded that those who escape from this battle cannot be complete. Will those who escape be tortured to the point of having limbs and bodies incomplete, or will they not be able to live a complete life in the second half of their lives and die? No matter what this threat is, Lizu is too lazy to understand. He rejected Bane's invitation and decisively took out the toy gun and shot at the muscular man. The moment the third rubber soft bullet was ejected, the toy gun became a real thing, and the muzzle spewed flames. Bang, 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 bang. Unfortunately, the human body outlining gun technique didn't hit any target. Instead, Lizu's body was pushed by the reaction force of the gun, and his bones were numb. The muscular man held his head, standing in the metal storm of bullets. When the gunshot stopped, he found that he was still alive. Click, the sound of an empty magazine sounded so pleasant. Forget it, I'll go with you. Lizu dropped the gun in annoyance. Not being able to hit a single bullet obviously ruined his mood. The muscular man breathed a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, as expected, this group of people can get together. Either they are monsters who are strong beyond the limit of human beings, or they are crazy people with abnormal brains. Where are we going? Blackgate Prison. Chapter 48 Dr. Quinzel. Blackgate Prison. The helicopter landed. Lizu got off the plane and walked in from the most familiar rooftop passage, stepping on the whistling cold wind. The whole journey was escorted by thugs in police uniforms, who pretended to be Gotham police and gave the green light all the way so that the helicopter was not destroyed by the armed forces stationed outside. Lizu's trip to Blackgate Prison was like entering a deserted place. As soon as he walked into the prison, the opposite wall was sprayed with green paint, Merry Christmas and a bad clown smiley face mark. Ignoring the blood at his feet and the crazy and excited prisoners, perhaps this wall is just an ordinary, seemingly not so deadly joke. The cheering prisoners in prison uniforms are like wild horses that have run away. They cheered around Lizu, and some people recognized him and hid aside in fear. Lizu, led by the arrow, walked forward and stopped in front of a TV. The TV was placed on the table, where the prison guards were supposed to be. The screen was splashed with blood. It seemed that the prisoners had spent a lot of effort to get this TV. Many prison guards were also sacrificed. Welcome back. Welcome back. After a burst of snow, the pale smiling face, green hair, and the carefully arranged thick lipstick to cover the scar at the corner of the mouth appeared on the screen. Are you going to put on a big show? Lizu turned his head left and right. Where are the guests and the audience? I need you to do me a small favor. The clown did not answer Lizu's question, but raised his fingers and pinched the tip of his nails to gesture a very small point. Don't you want to collide with our superhero? Lizu stared at the TV. He was sure that the clown was watching him. That must be very interesting. Snap. The TV lost the signal, and the screen was replaced by snow again. The clown believed that Lizu would not refuse his request. This was the confidence of a madman. And Lizu would not refuse this request because he had no need to hide, and a finale would make people more concerned. "Take me to the stage," Lizu said to the prisoner who had become timid the moment he saw him. "I want to see the finale." The prisoner stood up and touched his bald head. "Follow me." They crossed 2 floors of stairs and passed the craziest area. But they were attracted by a burst of women's abuse. "Why are you still tying up a lady?" Lizu's eyes stopped, crossed more than 30 steps down, and stopped at a figure tied to a chair. It was a sexy female doctor wearing a white coat, glasses, and black stockings. "Get out. Get out. Get out." Hearing the voice, she was a little panicked. Lizu walked towards the female doctor and stood in front of her. His eyes swept over the other person's white and slender neck, which was tied up by hemp rope, and her beautiful face. It was the clown, but he only tied up the female doctor and said a few words before leaving. The prisoner on the side spat, greedily looking at the female doctor. "If a woman appears in this place, the consequences will be very serious. This is a gift from the clown to us, a Christmas gift." The prisoner's words resonated with the prisoners. Seeing a sexy and charming female doctor, the happy prisoners began to approach slowly. She was the little lamb thrown into the wolf pack, with her bloody mouths already opened. Bang! Gunshot. "Ah!" The woman screamed. She was indeed frightened by the sudden gunshot. The carnival stopped suddenly, and everyone looked at Lizu, who was holding a pistol to the side. A few seconds ago, he was empty-handed. Lizu did not look sideways, but the bullets from the pistol, raised to the side, accurately hit the man who was about to take off his pants, successfully piercing his temple. The body fell to the ground, emitting a stench that all corpse eaters hated. The gurgling blood gathered into a pool of blood. "Well, I hit it this time." Lizu was very satisfied with his marksmanship. He turned the pistol back into a toy, put it in his pocket, and walked towards the female doctor with a smile on his face. He bent down, put his face close to the female doctor, and said in a very soft voice, "I hate rapists. They will be sentenced to death in my place." In the distance, the person who was about to come up to share a piece of the pie shuddered. The female doctor's eyes were already misty. That was not touching, but fear. "Please rest assured." Lizu's eyes swept across the female doctor's chest and deliberately emphasized his tone. "Dr. Harleen Quinzel." He walked away, leaving only the female Dr. Harleen Quinzel, who was frozen in place, and the prisoners who dared not move. A gust of black wind blew, and the black shadow stuck to the ceiling, hanging outside the range of the lighting. What happened here? He jumped up, kicked the 2 prisoners behind the female Dr. Quinzel with his legs, and quickly punched out the others, before stopping in front of the female doctor's chair. "Batman." The female doctor stood up and rubbed her shoulders. "I didn't expect you to really exist, Dr. Quinzel." Batman didn't understand why the female doctor was mentally stable. This was not the attitude a kidnapped person should have, but it was convenient for him to ask some questions. "I'm a doctor from Arkham Asylum. Today I'm responsible for psychological evaluation of several guys," she said, "but I was caught by them during the riot a few hours ago. I even fell into the hands of a green-haired guy, but he was very interesting." "Where's the Joker?" he asked. "I just saw the man wearing a Santa hat who can turn toys into real guns running over there." Dr. Quinzel pointed behind him and said, "That's the road." Batman nodded. "Go to the roof from here. The police will take you back on the roof. I have cleared the dangers along the way. In addition, Doctor, it's actually very dangerous for you to wear it like this." In the end, Batman couldn't help but give advice to the sexy female doctor. "This is a normal reaction of men. They can't help but look over here." Dr. Quinzel obviously didn't buy it. After watching Dr. Harleen Quinzel leave, Batman turned around and chased in the direction Lizu left. "Why is it him?" As Lizu just walked into a coliseum, an unhappy voice came from above his head. Bane, wearing a hood, was wearing a set of strange infusion equipment all over his body, piercing into his skin, and green energy flowed. He was more powerful than before. Ha 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 ha. The one who laughed beside Bane was the Joker. The Joker held his belly and pointed at Lizu and laughed. "I'm so glad you're back. Let's play a deadly joke with Batman together." "No need." Bane was the first to refuse. He roared and fell from the sky, and the shadow of his huge fist enveloped Lizu. Boom! Exclamation mark. Dust flew. He is really impatient. The Joker curled his lips. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Gordon to the rescue. The dust cleared and the sight was restored. A red Santa hat was put on Bane's head, and the angry square face looked funny. Lizu was like a clever monkey, half squatting on Bane's shoulder. However, judging from the way he rubbed his shoulders, Bane's fist just now was not completely meaningless. He took a breath, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth, but his smile was also very bright. Get down. Bane raised his fist and grabbed the skinny monkey on his shoulder. The green liquid penetrated under the skin, and the muscles and veins bulged like an explosion. Lizu jumped and narrowly escaped Bane's thugs. He grabbed the iron rod above his head with both hands, bent down and swung it hard, like the gorgeous stage acrobatics of Flying Grayson, spinning and throwing his body into the air, and finally landed steadily and stood in front of the clown. Wow, the Joker did not hide his surprise. He held a pistol in his right hand, grinning hard, and the scar on his cheek stretched to his ear. What a surprise. Toyman, you too are just as surprising, Lizu said meaningfully. The Joker actually returned to Blackgate Prison for Batman, and not only that, he also dragged himself back to Blackgate Prison to deal with Batman. Should we say that the Joker is a real mad dog who never considers the consequences, just to make things more fun? Or is the Joker a crazy military strategist who will leave no stone unturned in order to defeat Batman? In Lizu's opinion, Blackgate Prison is definitely not the best choice to destroy Gotham and Batman. The most terrible bastards in the whole city gathered here. All you need to do is open a door for them and wait for these bastards to swarm out. Then you just need to watch, and you will naturally see unexpected stories. Everything will be out of control. The wolves that broke free from the cage will not bite the breeders out of old feelings. On the contrary, their bites will be more brutal. Moreover, from the beginning, Lizu did not believe that Bane had asked him to deal with Batman. With Bane's character, he would never take him seriously. Only the Joker, who liked to play jokes, was more willing to pull Lizu, who was willing to leave the game, back to the center of the vortex. Pulling everyone into the dark abyss was the Joker's fun, even if this fun was full of bad taste in Lizu's eyes. Bane doesn't seem to like you, the Joker pointed at the angry and roaring Bane below, like looking at a roaring lion through an iron cage. Although Bane had a strong and terrifying body, he wanted to rely on a jump to the 2-story high platform, but it was still a bit difficult. For the time being, it seemed that Lizu was still safe. That's a pity. The children like me very much. Lizu's voice sounded a little regretful. Warden Joseph, we meet again. Lizu walked around the Joker and walked to the Black Warden who was trapped on the side. He bent down, raised his right hand to the side of his face and waved it, grinning strangely. I'm so glad you're still alive. Sure enough, it was this madman who sent you in. Joseph stared at Lizu, his voice firm. A person appeared inexplicably in Blackgate Prison. If we combine everything that happened tonight, it is not difficult to guess the real reason for Lizu's appearance here. Ha 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 ha. Batman, you're finally here. The Joker's laughter suddenly sounded, interrupting Lizu's prepared chat. The Black Shadow, like flowing water under the dim light, wanted to get in silently. Ah. Bane had already pounced on him. Bane, who was wrapped in an fourth tube, smashed Batman with his increasingly swollen fist. After the dust flew, Batman spitted blood and rolled on the ground continuously until he hit the wall. The things in front of him became blurred, and tinnitus occupied all hearing. Dizzy bang, a foot landed in front of Batman, slowly calling back his consciousness. Now you have two choices. The Joker's comic laughter echoed. Bane was very unwilling to lose to you before, so this time you have two choices. 1. Kill Bane. 2. Let Bane kill you. Batman's neck tightened, and he was strangled, and slowly lifted up. His eyes moved away from Bane's ferocious square face full of blue veins, and followed the sound, to find the Joker above his head. He also saw Lizu next to the Joker. The Joker raised his third finger, laughed twice, and then continued. 2.1 I have an explosive detonator connected to Bane's heart. Within 5 minutes, you must find a way to let Bane's heart rest for a while. In layman's terms, you must kill him. Otherwise, the explosion will be detonated somewhere, and he will die. The Joker scratched his chin and thought, it's the rioting bastard prisoners in Blackgate prison and the police who have sneaked in. And 2.2 The Joker's voice became louder, and his bad ideas obviously did not stop there. Bang! A gunshot interrupted the Joker. Sheriff Gordon stood at the door, pointing his gun at the Joker, and his eyes were still alert to Lizu, who was standing next to Warden Joseph. Hello. Lizu waved his hand to greet Sheriff Gordon. It's you, bastard. Gordon's face changed from surprise to anger. Don't move, you two. If you do, I can't guarantee that the gun will leave a hole in your body, Gordon said, holding the gun and slowly approaching the two. The Joker raised his hands obediently, and Lizu also slowly raised his hands, but he was still holding a toy gun in his right hand. When his toy gun was raised above his head and pointed in the direction of Sheriff Gordon, the Joker began to laugh crazily. Don't move. Gordon couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. Batman, who was being pinched by the neck and raised above his head, began to have a fuzzy consciousness. He was also paying attention to the development of the things above his head. Thump 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 thump! Exclamation mark. The toy gun spewed rubber bullets, and Gordon's body was hurt by the rubber bullets. Anger made him ready to rush forward with this meaningless prank and shoot the Asian bastard in the face. Puff! The bullet hole at the foot calmed Gordon down. The toy gun that was still spewing rubber bullets a second ago suddenly turned into a life harvester that poured out metal bullets a second later. Flames sprayed from the muzzle. Bullets also blasted bullet holes on the side of Sheriff Gordon. He stepped back, and luckily, he was unharmed after Lizu fired all the bullets. Oops, I think I missed it. Lizu's voice contained a smile. Gordon secretly broke into a cold sweat. If it weren't for this weird human body outlining gun technique, I believe there would be only one more bloody corpse on the ground at this time. The opponent's gun had no bullets, and Gordon cheered up again. His chance has come. Don't move. He rushed forward quickly, kicked the clown away, and pointed the gun at Lizu's head. Thank you for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 50 Bane's pipe cutting game. Lizu's spiritual world. Don't let me see you do anything strange again, especially touching toys. I promise you will see your brains. Gordon's pistol was against Lizu's head. He was very strong, and the barrel of the gun poked Lizu hard, causing his head to fall back without being able to bear the force. In an emotionally out of control situation, Sheriff Gordon might shoot at any time. Why did you come to Blackgate prison? What did you do in the police station? I borrowed the toilet. Lizu loosened his right hand and let the empty pistol turn back into a toy, falling from his hand and hitting the ground. He acted without any threat, which made Gordon relax his vigilance a little and calm down a little. The police station is a very warm place. I like the Christmas atmosphere there. Huh. Gordon was obviously not satisfied with this answer. At least Sheriff Gordon didn't seem to be so out of control. Batman was strangled by Bane below and lifted up. Lizu was held against the head by Gordon with a pistol, and the Joker fell to the ground holding his stomach. As for those bastards who were wearing prison uniforms and broke free from the iron cage, they were not qualified to participate in this fight. They just watched from a distance, ready to go. I've been caught. Lizu helplessly spread his hands to the clown, indicating that he had no resistance under the threat of the gun. If he shoots me, oh, I don't want to die. Really? That's a pity. The clown, who was kicked to the ground by Gordon, leaned against the iron railing, holding his stomach and laughing. The clown did not believe that Lizu could dodge Gordon's gun, but he simply wanted to laugh crazily. Sometimes, mad dogs can't even understand themselves. Sheriff, be careful. He is not an ordinary person. Warden Joseph saw Lizu flying in the sky like an acrobat, and he reminded Gordon not to take it lightly. But his reminder was too late. The moment Gordon was distracted by Warden Joseph, Lizu had already grabbed Gordon's pistol with his right hand and pulled it down, trying to move the muzzle pointing at his head and save his life. Almost at the same time, Gordon pulled the trigger. Zzzz, the water gun sprayed Lizu's face. Aha, it seems that there is something wrong with your gun. Lizu reached out and wiped his face. He spit water. The situation changed again. Sheriff Gordon, who was holding a toy gun, became a prisoner. On the contrary, a toy meat saw was pressed across Sheriff Gordon's neck. Now no one would doubt whether this plastic toy knife would reap human lives, because just a few breaths ago, the owner of the meat saw used his hands to turn a real gun into a toy water gun. Lizu held the meat saw, and the plastic blade felt light in his hand, but no one dared to doubt the power of this knife. Sheriff Gordon, please don't move. Lizu gently picked his ear with his left little finger. Ha 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 ha. The Joker got up from the ground, holding his stomach. He raised his arm and hugged Gordon's stiff shoulders, with a gun against Gordon's head. Sheriff Gordon, who had the upper hand a second ago, had become the Joker's prisoner the next second. The Joker laughed strangely. Our warm-up performance is over. It's time to watch the next performance. Toy man, do you have time to do me a favor? The copperhead snake seems to be not very obedient. Lizu put down the meat saw toy and passed the Joker. With pleasure. Batman was pinched by Bane's neck. Suffocation caused brain hypoxia, and then his mind fell into a state. The wave of coma rushed over and almost drowned Batman. The Joker's laughter, the exclamations of Sheriff Gordon and Warden Joseph came from above. Batman barely opened his eyes, but only saw Sheriff Joseph on the side, and Sheriff Gordon, who was hugged by the Joker's neck and pointed at his head with a gun. He could still glimpse Lizu's back as he left. This is Batman, ha 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 ha. Bane laughed wildly and disdainfully. He felt ridiculous for treating Batman as an enemy and being too nervous. A mere Batman could never be his opponent. It was a pity that he lost to him and even regarded him as the most important enemy in his life. Puff, a crisp sound of a blade cutting through a plastic tube. Batman took the opportunity to cut off Bane's infusion tube with a dart, and the green liquid that was continuously poured into the infusion tube spurted out and turned into green rain mist above his head. After the green liquid in the infusion tube spurted out, the tube in Bane's blood vessel, feeling the pressure of the heart, spurted out with blood. Bane fell to the ground, but Batman had already raised his hand, fired the bat gun in his hand, and headed straight for the best audience seat above his head. 5:45, Blackgate Prison, Chapel. The prisoners occupied the chapel in another way. They became corpses. The dim light barely dispelled the darkness. The thin footsteps slowly approached. Lizu pushed open the heavy door of the chapel and walked in. Copperhead Snake? He turned his head left and right, as if he didn't notice the figure lying on the wall in the corner. Whoosh, a gust of wind blew past his ears, and Lizu's head was severely hit. His body flew out uncontrollably and hit the ground. He rolled for more than 10 rounds before stopping. Pa. He spat out a mouthful of blood, supported the ground with his elbows, and sat up, his head dizzy. Hehe. Lizu smiled at the woman in the distance, not because this guy brought him 1% of the world exploration, but because of his simple pain, which awakened Lizu's crazy heartbeat. A lunatic. The copperhead snake stared at Lizu with disgust. He pounced on Lizu and easily stabbed Lizu's neck when Lizu was completely unable to resist. Plop. Lizu fell to the ground. A few strands of green overflowed from the wound on his neck. The blood followed the crazy beating of the artery, and the green also flowed along the blood vessels to Lizu's heart, and from his heart, it was quickly sent to the whole body. This is neurotoxin. The copperhead snake stood leisurely in front of Lizu and explained easily, you will suffer unprecedented fear. Of course, when your fear reaches the deepest point, you will become one of them. I really hope that you will still have such a disgusting smile on your face by then. Ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Lizu laughed with his head raised, knelt on the ground, and his eyes were empty. Just as the copperhead snake said, he did see it. He was in a monastery at this time. He could hear the sound of rats in the brand new walls. It was an illusion. Suddenly, he was in a strange town, and could smell the fishy smell of fish. It was still an illusion. The weird ghouls were running under the moonlight. The old god, made up of countless pieces of meat and bones, raised his feet without hesitation in the singing of the believers, trampled the believers into mincemeat, and then roared at the monster, covered with tentacles under the red moon above his head. In the crazy spiritual world, he seems to be getting closer and closer to the vague madness, and closer to the truth of everything. Thank you Jiang Cheng Wei Leng for the reward of 100 starting coins. Thank you Jiang Huo Lei for the reward of 100 starting coins. Thank you I'm Gadling Bodhisattva for the reward of 100 starting coins. Thank you Aang Fi for the reward of 100 starting coins for 5 times. Thank you Kanshutacha Nabayao for the reward of 1000 starting coins. Thank you My Hero Will Shine for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you again for the large amount of rewards, as well as the support of recommendation votes and collections. I know that there have been few updates recently, and the speed is slow, and I'm working hard to add more. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.